Chapter 2253. I don't want to say goodnight to you. I want you to miss me so much that you can't sleep at night. But wife, can you stop taking all the blankets? Yu Qinjin. For a person who can have anything he wants, I was used to getting everything since I was young. I was even proud and arrogant, and no one caught my eye. What is love? If someone asked me, I would definitely sneer and tell them that there is no such thing as love in this world. Because most girls only look at money and looks, of course. There might be a small portion that isn't like that, but I haven't met anyone. When I first saw her, I didn't even see her clearly. The classmates in the class were all praising her for a long time. But when the teacher said she was just a normal student, everyone seemed to stop talking. What followed was the sighs and mockery of the girls. I couldn't help but sneer. If she was a rich girl with power in a city, how could she receive this kind of treatment? He originally thought that she would choose to silently endure the ridicule like everyone else and quietly hide in a corner to live her life. I didn't expect her to choose Lu Qiufan as her desk mate. Actually, my first reaction was, since she's so bold, why didn't she choose me as her desk mate? When she walked to the empty seat next to Lu Qiufan, I glanced at her from the corner of my eyes. She was indeed very beautiful, especially her eyes. They were like dust without any ripples. At first, I thought she was pretending to be calm, but I didn't know she was just that calm. Also, she never wanted to talk to me, which made me feel very strange. There were countless people in this school who wanted to get close to me, no matter if they were normal or noble, but this was the first girl who didn't even look at me. Although she told me she looked at me a lot after she became my wife, I was looking at the scenery outside the window. Was she not looking at Lu Qiufan? Ever since she sat in front of me, I felt that she was a bit familiar, as if I had seen her somewhere before. Yes, I asked her out of great curiosity. I probably wanted to see if the girl who never talked to me was pretending to be reserved, or if she didn't like me. Later, after we got married, I brought this up many times, and she would always give me an infuriating answer. Because at first sight, I thought Lu Qiufan was more handsome. I threw myself on the bed without a word until she murmured that I was more handsome. Of course, this was all in the future. At that moment, she was saying that my way of flirting was old-fashioned and that there was nothing new about it. This was the first time in my life that I felt defeated. I actually fell into the hands of a little girl. He didn't know why his heart was filled with panic, but he also paid more attention to her. However, paying attention to her was just paying attention to her, and that didn't mean anything. What I wanted more was to watch others ostracize her, or even make a move on her. Perhaps I didn't see my own heart clearly at that time. That was the thing I regretted the most in my life. On that rainy night, those people surrounded her in the alley. I watched as she held a black umbrella. She didn't want Mu Nanxi and Lu Qiufan to accompany her. She wanted to face a group of people alone. At that moment, I felt my heart skip a beat. Somehow, I felt that she was very brave. Perhaps this was the stubbornness of Cinderella in fairy tales? Chapter 2254. I was actually nearby the day she was beaten up by a group of big sisters. I was like her, holding a black umbrella and watching them force her into a corner. I knew I was waiting for a chance to be a hero and save the beauty. I think she will be very grateful to me and like me very much. At that time, I would have the right to choose and see if she was really special to me. But I never thought that my future wife didn't need me at all. On that rainy night, in that dark and damp corner, she was wearing a clean school uniform and holding a black umbrella. His eyes were cold, without a trace of warmth. She didn't panic and stood there calmly. When her eyes swept over, there was an indescribable killing intent. That night, when I saw her like this from above, I couldn't help but hold my breath. But before I could react, she had already killed her way into the crowd. Sharp screams came from the alley, and there seemed to be the sound of weapons falling. 3 minutes later, the alley gradually quieted down. There was a slight moan in the sound of the heavy rain. She was still wearing a clean school uniform and holding the umbrella in her hand. Her clothes weren't even wet. I saw her coldly look up and walk out of the alley step by step. At that moment, countless feelings mixed together in my heart. Indescribable emotions. Maybe even I didn't know why it was like this. Why did I have a feeling of heartache and want to protect her? That night, I didn't sleep at all and suppressed the indescribable emotions in my heart. I wanted to use all my strength to get her gaze and attention, to put myself in a superior position and have the right to choose. Unfortunately, I didn't succeed and instead fell deeper and deeper. I kept these thoughts at the bottom of my heart and resisted with all my might. But in the end, I failed. I was sure I couldn't hide the love in my heart. It was on that sunny morning. The girl who always liked to cause trouble in the class declared war on them again. In a moment of desperation, she actually took out a knife. I watched as she gripped the dagger in a split second. Her expression didn't change at all. She didn't even blink her eyebrows. However, I felt my heart skip a beat. The feeling of not being able to breathe was really uncomfortable. I looked at her desperately trying to save people. Her face was pale from the loss of blood, but she didn't stop what she was doing. Her bright eyes were so clear that one could see the bottom, and there was only indifference in them. Lucio Fawn stepped forward and handed her a handkerchief. Like a knight in a fairy tale, she silently protected her regardless of the eyes of others. I knew that if I didn't do anything, I might lose it soon. Ever since I was young, I've been a very stubborn person. If I like something, I'll always like it. I like it 100% and won't change. At that moment, I knew that I could no longer ignore the feelings that filled my heart and the image of her that I couldn't get rid of in my mind. I found out I like her, but I didn't know her feelings for me. Just like how I desperately wanted to catch her gaze, but no matter what, I couldn't get it. But it was precisely because of this that I couldn't allow that person called Lucio Fawn to take advantage of the situation. What I want, the person I like, I will never give to others. Chapter 2255. Reality proved that my interference that day was correct. At least I forcefully kept her by my side to prevent her from being taken away by criminals. I gave her my phone number, and before I left, I provoked her and asked, "Do you dare to call?" Actually, I was even more nervous than her at that time. I checked my phone every 10 seconds after returning home. It was clearly fully charged, but I was worried that I would run out of battery. I even asked the housekeeper many times if the villa's Wi-Fi would suddenly be cut off. The housekeeper replied, "Young master, Wi-Fi is not needed to make a call." The corner of my mouth twitched, and I powerlessly laid down on the sofa. So this was the feeling of being infected by the poison of love, nervousness, uneasiness, powerlessness, anxiety, but still holding a heart full of joy and expectation, waiting for her response. Although she didn't call in the end. The next day, the school began to spread the news about the magic potion. Ching Ching even boldly blocked my path. She kept telling me that there was a problem with the water she gave me that day. It was the magic potion she made. As long as you drink the potion with blood, you will madly fall in love with the owner of the blood. And that day, the water I drank just happened to have a drop of my wife's blood in it. Actually, when I heard Ching Ching talk to me about this, I felt inexplicably excited. There was always a feeling that he had unwittingly drunk her blood, and he was excited. But I was very clear in my heart. The so-called magic potion didn't exist. Because when I started to think about her, I knew better than anyone. Perhaps it was the first time we spoke, or perhaps it was that night in the heavy rain, but I was very clear that it definitely wasn't that day. Ching Ching was very stubborn. She only closed her mouth when I put down my face. I wasn't a so-called gentleman. Although I never hit women, that didn't mean I would give them a good face. Of course, my wife was an exception. Although she didn't call me afterwards, she invited me to Moon Laurel Lane. I seriously booked the entire Star Moon Street, waiting for her arrival. I knew she wanted to treat me to a drink, but I didn't want her to drink. Why would a little girl drink? Not to mention she was injured. Although I said that, I still felt that the ambiguous atmosphere was raised to the extreme. In the quiet bar, under the warm light, I received her gaze. Those beautiful eyes looked at me attentively. But to me, her injuries were more important than anything, including the big matter of pouncing on her. I always felt that her first impression of me wasn't good, so I had to work hard to leave a better impression. The facts proved that my efforts weren't in vain. I could feel that she liked me. At least she was liking me slowly. Ever since she became my girlfriend, other than a few girls, no one dared to cause trouble for her. Although I knew that she could handle it, it was better to leave this kind of trivial matter to me. But I didn't think that the girl called He Ching Ching would want to test her so-called magic potion in front of so many people. What a joke. If it was in the past, no matter who the four great clans were, I wouldn't have shown any mercy, let alone accept the so-called ridiculous verification. Because I didn't want a reputation. Because I don't want other people's rumors to affect her. She is my princess, a princess who shines brilliantly. Chapter 2256. I drank this so-called magic potion in front of everyone and kissed her in the middle. Not for anything else, but to tell Alice and all the people. There was no such thing as a magic potion in this world. I liked her, no matter how long it took. It was like a gust of wind, blowing for 90,000 miles without asking when it would return. Since that time, almost no one in the school talked about the magic potion. After all, I used myself to break this rumor. Just when I thought everything was going well, I received a notice that the daughter of my father's good friend, Daisy, had returned to the country. I seem to have seen her a few times when I was young, but it was more than 10 years ago, so I didn't remember clearly. Moreover, most of them were noble daughters, so it was inevitable that they were a bit cold. If she didn't have the intention to get close to me, I wouldn't have any impression of her. Originally, this daughter returning to the country naturally had nothing to do with me. But my mother told me that she would be my fiancée. This news shocked me instantly, and I was at a loss. I had never disobeyed my father since I was young. Because he was the same, he had never interfered with my decision. But this time, I vaguely felt that I didn't have a right to choose. Because the love and hatred of the older generation was also very tangled. I heard that my father and Uncle Luolong's wife, Daisy, had a young love, but because of various family interests, they didn't get together in the end. As for the Luo family, he more or less felt guilty. But guilt was guilt, and it couldn't be made up for with my future happiness. I didn't agree, okay? Because the noble circle was so small, it didn't take long for the news of mine and Daisy's engagement to spread. At that time, I was afraid that she would misunderstand. Later, I hoped that she wouldn't know the process, but I knew that there would always be people who would gossip. Of course, those people all disappeared in Alice's eyes. After all, I couldn't tolerate sand in my eyes. I kept reassuring her, telling her not to worry. But she didn't seem to be worried at all and didn't look nervous at all. This made me feel a bit frustrated. After all, only when you like, you will be jealous. Only when you like, you will care. Later, I thought that she probably believed me. Then, I couldn't do anything to let her down. So when the two families met that night at the Imperial Royal Hotel, I laid my cards on the table with my father. I knew he would be angry and would object, but I said what I had to say, and at the last moment, I knew he was wavering. After all, he knew what kind of person I was. Originally, it was just two families canceling the marriage alliance, but we were still family friends. But if I were to go all out, then we wouldn't even be family friends anymore. However, the heavens always like to joke around. I was like a frog at the bottom of a well, watching my fiancée switch between the roles of Cinderella and princess. Never in my wildest dreams would I have thought that she was Daisy, the only daughter of the Luo family. Surprise, joy, excitement. Countless emotions mixed together, causing me to almost lose my senses. It turned out that our script had already been written the day before. It turned out that we were not a prince and Cinderella at all, but a prince and a princess. It turned out that fairy tales were so wonderful. If there is still a chance, I have one more thing to say to her. I miss my childhood sweetheart and avoided my first awakening of love. Now, I only want to be with you. Chapter 2257. Welcome back, host. The following is a summary of this mission. Host, please read it carefully. Name: Luo Qingchen Plain Space. Magic Potion. You will madly love me. Mission completion. 100%. Experience points. Due to returning to this plane, the original 500 experience points gained from this plane are no longer effective. The portable space currently stores 5 items: 4/5 exquisite ring, 9-section moon whip, phoenix dance sword, universal medicine box. Permanent ability: space and time freeze, LV 4 permanent ability. Instant movement, LV 2 exchange points, 8,000 base points. 40 hosts 37th mission panel is below. Appearance, physical strength, intelligence, stature. In the next second, the bronze mirror changed pages. Mission grade. A experience gained. 500 female lead. Luo Qingchen male lead. Mo Yi supporting female lead. Feng Ling air supporting male lead. Murong Nan mission content. Return to 3 days before the death of the female lead and obtain the love of the male lead. Mission change. 2 spacetimes. What do you mean by 2 spacetimes? Host will know after receiving the memories. Memories are being released. Host, please check carefully. After receiving all the memories, Luo Qingchun suddenly felt a little scared. Because she returned to 3 days ago and not 3 years ago. It wasn't because 3 days and 3 years was a big difference, but because 3 days, she couldn't change the ending. She couldn't do anything. The story was very long. When receiving it, even as the host, she felt a sense of suffocation. She didn't know how to describe this kind of original host and male lead. She could only say that fate made fools of people. The time had to start from when they were young. The male lead was the son of Consort Wan of the Mo dynasty. Consort Wan was originally a princess of the previous dynasty. The father of the male lead, Mo Yi, pitied her and brought her into the harem. But as an emperor, his natural disposition was romantic. In addition, Mo Ye's father, Mo Gongyi, wasn't an infatuated emperor. In addition, Consort Wan herself didn't have a devastatingly beautiful appearance. Once the novelty passed, she lost her position in Mo Gongyi's heart. After all, every year, there would be a beautiful young mistress entering the palace. There were many girls to replace her. Fortunately, Consort Wan was pregnant before she was left out in the cold. That child was the male lead, Mo Yi. However, he was born tragedy. No one liked her, no one loved her. After Consort Wan's death, he was raised by a nanny in the palace. Because of his low status in the palace, not only did he not enjoy the favor of the princes, his life was even worse than that of the common people. Fortunately, Mo Yi had been patient since he was young and was indifferent to matters of power. Seeing that he had no future, everyone stopped harming him. Mo Gongyi's natural disposition was romantic. He had more than 20 princes and more than 40 princesses. He didn't even know the names of some of his children. Naturally, Mo Yi was one of them. The original owner and Mo Yi first met when she was 7 years old. She was the daughter of the 7th madam of the imperial censor's family, so she could be considered a concubine. There was one thing that the original owner had encountered that was very similar to Mo Yi. That was, their fathers were romantic by nature. They liked one woman after another, and their hearts changed faster than the change of seasons. Spring passed, and autumn came, and the women standing by their side were always different. In Mo Gongyi's 20 years, the Mo dynasty was prosperous and the people were at peace. At that time, Mo Yi was 14 years old, and the original owner was only 7 years old. Chapter 2258. After all, in such a lively ceremony, as long as they put in a few good words in front of the emperor, not only could they get gold, silver, and treasures, but they also had the opportunity to gain fame and status. Even if they did not have any of these, playing a song or singing a song could also be rewarded. At the very least, brushing their faces in front of the emperor was also good. But they didn't go. It was probably because their backgrounds were similar, which made them feel a sense of mutual appreciation. In the loneliest time, they met their childhood sweetheart. For Mo Yi, the original owner had always been a child who needed to be protected. He said, "I am just a prince without power, a fish on the chopping block. Are you still willing to be friends with me?" She replied, "I have seen Big Brother Prince. Then are you willing to be friends with me, a concubine's child?" This rhetorical question made Mo Yi speechless. "Well, from now on, I am your friend, and my only friend." From that day on, the original owner would go to the palace from time to find Mo Yi. The palace was strictly guarded, and most of them sneaked in behind their father. Although there was a gap of a whole generation between them, it did not prevent them from communicating. On the contrary, they both felt that only they could understand each other's words. In the 25th year of Mo Gongyi's reign, the Princess Royal held 100-flower banquet. The whole banquet was full of flattering people. Because this banquet was quite special, they did not have time to sneak away after they took their seats. What was a 100-flower banquet? The ancients had a saying, 100 flowers compete in splendor. This was the meaning. So the men and women at the banquet wanted to climb the social ladder, and some wanted to find true love. For the original owner and MOE, this was a world that was incompatible with them. But they did not think that just because they did not offend others, it did not mean that others would not offend them. Mo City, also known as Moonshine City, was the main city of the Mo dynasty. There were rumors in the marketplace that the fourth Prince Moe was the most handsome man in the entire Moonshine City and was the object of many women's admiration. But because of his humble status, even if he had a bewitching appearance, the daughters of ministers could only look at him twice and did not dare to come forward to strike up a conversation. And at this time, His Royal Highness the Crown Prince came over. He seemed to be drunk. With a beaming smile on his face, he said, "I heard that fourth brother is the most handsome man in Moonshine City. How come you don't have a beautiful woman by your side?" The Crown Prince's name was Mo Quan. Like his name, he was big-hearted and fat. Mo Gongi gave him this name because he wanted her to treat him leniently. Little did he know that his body shape was also developing horizontally. He wasn't tall, but he was as fat as a ball. But even with such an appearance, he was still surrounded by several women supporting him. The original owner was only 12 years old at that time, but she had grown into a slender and elegant girl. Naturally, she was furious that Moe was being bullied. Without another word, she stood up and walked towards Moe. Then, she stood firmly beside him. A few seconds later, he said, "Who said there isn't?" The original owner would never forget that gaze. She wasn't afraid of power, she wasn't afraid of getting hurt, and she didn't care about karma. Liking someone meant standing firmly by his side at all times. Even if the person he was facing was the Crown Prince, who was second only to the most powerful person in the world. Of course, bravery came with a price. For example, she was beaten by her father, who she had never loved. For example, she was not given food for 3 days and 3 nights. The reason was very simple. The Luo family wanted to support the Crown Prince, not some prince of the Cold Palace. Chapter 2259. Moreover, it was the 100-flower banquet set up by the eldest princess, so some things were already unavoidable. Moreover, the eldest princess was still enthusiastically talking in front of the emperor about how she felt they were a particularly compatible pair. In the end, the emperor decreed the marriage. Even if the original owner's father was unwilling, he couldn't defy the emperor's order. Henceforth, the matter between the original owner and Moe was settled like this. When the original owner reached the age of 18, she would marry the fourth prince. He earnestly said, "You treat me like this, I have no way to repay you. From now on, my life is yours." She only smiled and shook her head. "I don't want her life. As long as you treat me well, it's fine. I don't want extravagant clothing and jade food, glory and wealth. As long as we could be together, it's fine. I will always be by your side. I absolutely won't leave you behind." The words Moe said to her constantly reverberated in her mind in the following days. It was like a hot needle, little by little, piercing her heart. It was very painful, but it was somewhat warm. In the 28th year of Mo Gongi's reign, the eldest princess died of illness. The Feng dynasty was eyeing the Mo dynasty covetously, ready to dispatch troops at any time for a groundless crime. After Mo Gongi learned of this matter, he decided to send a hostage to the Feng dynasty. On one hand, he expressed his friendliness, and on the other hand, he could monitor the enemy. In the imperial court and the harem, only those with power could survive. After so many years, only a few of Mo Gongi's 20-something princes remained. Now, there were only 3 left. One was the Crown Prince, one was the 4th Prince, and one was the 8th Prince. The power in the imperial court was divided into the Crown Prince and the 8th Prince. Because the 8th Prince was the son of his most beloved imperial concubine Li, he naturally wouldn't let him go to the Feng dynasty. The crown prince was the future heir of the Mo dynasty, so it was even more impossible. Thus, using the process of elimination, the only one who could go to the Feng dynasty was Mo Yi. But Zhen once decreed that the fourth prince had an engagement. Mo Gongyi hesitated. Li Shi shook her head and said, "Now that the eldest princess has passed away, that engagement doesn't count." In the end, the emperor overturned the previous imperial edict and ordered Mo Yi to go to the Feng dynasty to become a hostage. That night, the original owner cried under the peach tree where they often drank. Mo Yi walked towards her step by step. Under the bright moonlight, he touched her head and said, "Don't cry. Wait for me to come back. I'll wait for you. I'll definitely wait for you." At that time, Mo Yi had told himself that he had to achieve something during this trip to the Phoenix dynasty. He no longer wanted to be a useless person who was at the mercy of others. He couldn't even protect the people who were most important to him. Clearly, in another year, it would be her birthday. Clearly, she was so close to becoming his bride. Whether they were rich or poor, as long as they were together, there was nothing to fear. Unfortunately, the heavens didn't give them such a chance. 3 days later, he had no choice but to go to the Phoenix dynasty to become a hostage. Perhaps he never came back. Perhaps she had waited for a lifetime. Perhaps this was the happy ending of the story. But he just had to come back. He used 3 years to accumulate his own power in the Feng dynasty. Once again, he accidentally saved the Feng king's daughter while killing enemies, making Princess Feng Ling'er fall in love with him. The Feng king had always doted on his daughter. In addition, the Feng king appreciated capable people. Mo Yi had won every battle. He had already shed his identity as a hostage and became a general. Chapter 2260. Because without Feng Ling'er, there would be no troops from the Feng dynasty. In that case, he couldn't force the abdication. In fact, even if he didn't force the abdication, the Mo dynasty was already rotten on the inside. The two powers contended against each other, and in the end, both sides suffered. Mo Gongyi was seriously ill and on the verge of death. This was his chance, his only chance. As long as he stood at the highest point, he could let the original host stand by his side without any worries. In the end, he succeeded. Regardless of the many years of hardship, he became the king of the Mo dynasty. When he saw the original host again, she was still standing alone under the peach blossom tree. She was already a big girl. The wind gently blew at the corner of her clothes, making her appear very beautiful. Mo Yi stepped forward and gently hugged her. "I've returned. But you already have a wife, right?" It was naturally impossible for the original host to not know that he brought the Feng dynasty's princess back, but she still wanted to come to him without hesitation. Because she waited for too long, every time she got drunk under the peach blossom tree, she would always feel someone gently patting her head in a daze. To her, it was a beautiful dream, a very, very beautiful dream. "That's not important. From now on, I can protect you. I won't let anyone bully you. Thank you, Big Brother Yi." But they didn't know that women in the world were easily jealous, let alone Feng Ling'er, who had been spoiled since childhood. At first, she felt that Mo Yi was aloof, but she admired this kind of man even more. On the battlefield, he had the grace of 1 against 100. That face seemed to be carved by the heavens. Everything about Mo Yi made her deeply infatuated, so she wanted to marry him regardless of everything. She wanted her father to prepare an army for her to go to the Mo dynasty. But everything she did wasn't to make a wedding dress for someone else. Then, the person who occupied Mo Yi's heart, the person at the tip of her heart, must die. When Mo Yi told her about the original host's life, she always smiled and said, "It's good as long as you like it." In truth, she had already secretly altered Mo Yi's diet. The Phoenix dynasty had a type of chronic medicine that would cause a person to suddenly fall into a coma after consuming it for more than a month. They would only wake up after half a month. Feng Ling'er prepared everything and planned to use this half a month to get rid of the original owner. She already had a method in mind. A month later, the emperor suddenly fell into a coma. The secretariat found a letter of collaboration with the enemy, as well as a voodoo villain. The imperial censor's elder brother, the original owner's uncle, was an official. Rebellion, witchcraft, what terrifying words. Once one was tainted by them, one's entire family would be executed. That night, the original owner was locked up in the Supreme Court, waiting for the punishment from above. She thought that Mo Yi was now the most powerful person in the world. He said that he would protect her, and he would definitely do it. Last night, they had been drinking wine, composing poems, and dancing to the moon. She firmly believed that he would come to save her. Waiting was a long process. However, what was frightening was not waiting, but the result of waiting for so long. By the will of heaven, the emperor decrees. The Luo clan is suspected of conspiring against witchcraft. The evidence is conclusive. From now on, the men will be beheaded, and the women will be exiled to the river. The original owner did not see Mo Yi. Even when she finally put on a dirty prison uniform, handcuffed, and sent away from Moonshine City, she did not see Mo Yi. That time was probably the most painful time in the life of the original owner. In the end, he violated his oath and left her. Because of Fengling Air? She did not know. Chapter 2261. Fengling Air was very fast. In less than 3 days, the Luo palace was empty. The men were all beheaded, and the women were exiled to the border. You might ask why she could do this. Of course she could, because more than half of the Mo dynasty's troops were from the Feng dynasty. After Mo Yi fell into a coma, she naturally had the right to make all the decisions. Not to mention that rebellion and witchcraft deserved to die. On the way to the border, they had to sleep in the open. They barely had a bite to eat. Halfway through the journey, more than half of them had died. The soldiers didn't stop because of the dead. They weren't even willing to bury the dead with a single strand of sand. The corpses were casually thrown to the side of the road. Whether it was her older sister who bullied her when she was young, or her younger sister who mocked her for being a concubine's child, they all became family at this moment. When they fell one by one, she felt an inexplicable pain in her heart. The only belief she held on to came from her mother, but that night, it rained heavily. Lightning flashed and thunder roared. She hugged her mother and curled up under a tree, shivering. Her mother asked her, "If you knew Mo Yi was this kind of person, would you still love him?" After a long time, she bit her lip and said, "Mother, I can't stop myself from loving him, but I can hate him. I hate him with all my might. It's more than love." Her mother rubbed her head and slowly closed her eyes. "If you can go back, you must remember to endure. Only when the power is in your own hands can you have the chance to choose between love and hate." On that stormy night with lightning and thunder, the original owner's mother passed away. When she died, she was still worried about the original owner. She took advantage of the rainy night to bury her, then knelt in the rain for a long time without getting up. There were fewer and fewer people heading to the border. When they reached Yang City, there were less than 10 women left. At least 5 of them were about to die. The soldiers were afraid that the queen would blame them for not doing well, so they bought a few girls in Yang City and mixed in with them to head to the border. Because the original owner had a high fever for several days, she was thought to be a dying person and stayed in Yang City. Unfortunately, she wasn't fated to die. Yang City was like a city. Large amounts of business were done here every day. You can sell things and also sell people. After the original owner of the body stayed in the Ichuan brothel, she sold herself and became a singer. Because of her good looks, coupled with her charming voice, many officials and nobles from prestigious families stopped in succession and did not hesitate to spend a large amount of money to buy one of her songs. Half a year later, the host had become a popular singer in Yang City and the surrounding towns. She redeemed herself and left Yang City. Eventually, she joined a singing and dancing class heading to Moonshine City and changed her name to Penitence. No one knew her real name, but anyone who had heard her sing could feel the sadness in her voice. It was precisely because of this sadness that more people wanted to get close to her, wanted to have her. But no one succeeded. Along the way, she took 3 years to follow the singing and dancing class back to the Moonshine City. Along the way, she was not in a hurry. Sometimes, when there were many people in the town, The troop leader suggested that she perform a few more times, and she was willing to do so. At that time, she thought that her heart had already given up. For a few moments, she even wanted to escape. But every night in the nightmares, the 118 lives of the Luo clan were lost. He had no choice but to avenge the extermination of his sect. Chapter 2262. When the people of Moonshine City heard that the Chasing Dreams song and dance troupe was coming, they went to the streets to watch. Of course, what they wanted to see the most was Huinyang, the famous singer of this world. At that time, it happened to be the 3rd year of the new emperor's ascension, and a big banquet was held in the palace. There was a special invitation to go to the palace. The performance was to liven things up. The salary was 3 times the usual performance, and Huinyang was even better. The troop leader naturally knew that the original owner was not short of money, so when he received the invitation to enter the palace, he asked for her opinion. After all, when she went to the official residence to perform in the past, the original owner never went. But this time was different. The original owner almost immediately agreed to the troop leader and expressed her willingness to go. The troop leader was naturally very happy. He went to the inviter and asked for a deposit. 3 years, a whole 3 years. Back then, when everyone had died, she had kept finding excuses for him. Maybe he just didn't have enough time to save her. Maybe he had something that was hard to say. But the carefree throne always reminded her that there was no maybe. She did not want to find excuses for him. The fact was that he could not resist the power of the Feng dynasty's princess. She, on the other hand, was nothing more than a victim of this power. Just because they had a childhood promise, just because she was the person he loved the most. Love? Ridiculous love. In November of the same year, the 3rd year of the new emperor's ascension, a luxurious banquet. She stood in the middle of the dance floor and sang a beautiful song. Unexpectedly, everyone was amazed. Such a scene was so familiar. She used to stand bravely by his side, regardless of the eyes of everyone, and betrayed the whole world for him. But what did she get in return? Her whole family was beheaded. Except for her, no one survived. Moe recognized the original owner almost at a glance and rushed forward to hug her without saying a word. His embrace was very hot, but this kind of heat made her feel cold. Hatred had long blinded her eyes. Her mother's words to her kept ringing in her ears. Only by holding power in your hands can you get what you want and never be bullied. If she was young, she would not understand the meaning of this sentence, but now it involved the lives of more than 100 people in the Luo family. She should understand. Chinger, is that you? Is that you? She slowly took off the veil, covering her face. Her clear eyes carried a dark light as she looked at him and said, "Yes, I'm back." That very day, she was brought back to the palace by Moe and conferred the title of noble consort. She hadn't seen Feng Ling and didn't know where she was. There was no empress in the Mo dynasty now. After she left, he kept looking for her like a madman. He didn't let go of anyone who had hurt her. As for the culprit, Feng Ling, he did not kill her. Death was too easy. In a person's life, the lightest thing was the life, and the most important thing was the soul. The cold palace, where she waited for a long time, was where Feng Ling would return to for the rest of her life. After the previous host became an imperial concubine, Mo doted on her a lot, spending almost every night in Dim Light Palace. Glimmer Palace was a palace he had built for her. She was like the only light in his life, shining into his dark and damp heart. He said, "Chinger, the guilt I have towards you, I will definitely make it up to you in this life. I will never let anyone hurt you again." "Absolutely," she replied. I believe you. As long as I believe everything you say, it's fine as long as I can be by your side." Believe? Chapter 2263. She personally gave him a light pink sachet with her favorite peach blossoms, but she put a slow poison in it. That road to the Yellow Springs. From the day she entered the palace, she personally paved it for him. The front court and the back court involve a lot of people. With her identity, if she wanted to win power and sit in the court, she must learn to endure. Endure what ordinary people can't endure. Only then could she achieve great things. She never let herself be spoiled. Once Mo Yi came to Glimmer Hall, too many times she would pretend to be sick. Whenever there was a vacancy in the imperial court, Mo Yi would always ask her indirectly about who to choose. She always smiled and refused, saying that the harem couldn't interfere in politics. But in the end, she would still choose a few under Mo Yi's enthusiasm. She actually knew that Mo Yi allowed her to expand her power in the court. Mo Yi also knew that she had no sincerity and was always on guard. After 3 years of separation, she didn't complain at all when she came back. The Luo family's 118 people died, but she always lowered her head and smiled. It's all in the past. What kind of hatred? How could it be in the past? Even he couldn't forgive himself, let alone her. He understood her. He understood her so well. Her eyes were tender like water, but in her heart, she had already built layers of stone walls to prevent outsiders from entering. So even if he knew that she was constantly accumulating power in the palace, he always listened to her. He even used his own power to help her expand her power. The front court and the back court all praised her for seeing the big picture, except for the Nailin family, who had 300,000 soldiers. They had a daughter called Nailining, who was Mo Yi's imperial concubine. Then, she couldn't stay. Mo Yi's 7th year, she was pregnant. Now, only the Nailin family's power was left in the harem, and the only imperial concubine. She smiled coldly, almost without any hesitation. She asked the shadow guard to bring the abortion medicine, and without saying anything, she aborted the child and pushed the blame to Nailining. Mo Yi's only prince. The Nailin family was like a defeated army. Even the General Nailin Wei, who had a lot of achievements, couldn't escape the fate of being beheaded. In the darkness, he walked towards her step by step. He reached out and hugged her pale face, trembling as he cried. After a long time, he asked in a low voice, "Do you love me?" Actually, how could she not feel the pain of losing her child? That was their flesh and blood, an innocent life that had yet to be born. She clenched her teeth and couldn't hold back her tears. Her usual soft and delicate voice was replaced with only sadness as she said, "I did." In the past, she had loved, waited, believed, and missed him. But now, all that was left was hatred. Why can't we go back to the past? Why can't you love me again? Silence, silence, silence. A long silence ensued. She closed her eyes. The moment she opened them, her tone returned to normal. She softly murmured, "Qinxia has always loved your majesty." The strength in his arms was like a deflated balloon, but he still hugged her tightly in the next second. The guilt in his heart was magnified infinitely. If the original owner's family hadn't died, even if she didn't love him, he might have loved someone else. But because his entire family died, he couldn't jump out of this box and slowly sank. In Mo Yi's 12th year, the court was stable. The original owner already had half of the Mo dynasty's power, so it was normal for her to meddle in court politics. Chapter 2264. She didn't eat much because she was always afraid that she would get fat and become ugly. But when she was too thin, she would eat like crazy. Even if her stomach hurt, she didn't care at all. She always maintained herself in the most perfect state, presenting herself in front of him. These 10 long years, she felt tired, but she kept persevering. All the people who hurt her back then were already dead, except for Mo Yi and Feng Ling-er. She had asked Feng Ling-er several times where she was, but Mo Yi didn't answer. He didn't want her to see that woman again. He didn't want to mention her sadness. But in fact, her sadness had never healed. It just festered slowly in the long years. In Mo Yi's 15th year, Mo Yi's body was not as good as before. He would wake up coughing in the middle of the night, his face getting uglier. The sachet used to be changed every year, but now it's changed every 3 months. She always said with a smile, "The peach blossoms are blooming well this summer, so I made one more for His Majesty." In fact, it's just increasing the poison. In addition, the original host would brew medicine for him every day, but she added some more ingredients. Now she could already stand firm in the Mo dynasty. She didn't need Mo Yi anymore. For her, perhaps Mo Yi being alive was the biggest threat to her. In Mo Yi's 16th year, he couldn't get out of bed and always move. Occasionally, he liked to let her stay by his side, looking at her deeply, and then gently touching her head. He liked to look at her like this, but he knew he didn't have much time. At the end of Mo's 16th year, he slept most of the time. Occasionally, he opened his eyes, always frantically looking for her voice. She probably calculated the days, and he was about to die. These days, he didn't go to the court anymore, and spent most of his time with her. Inside and outside the palace, people were talking about her virtue. It was the Mo dynasty's blessing that the current emperor could marry such a woman. Occasionally, a few words would reach Mo's ears. He would always be very happy to hear it. Even if he could barely sit up, he would personally reward the people who brought these rumors. At this point in the story, the original owner's memory began to blank out. Luo Qingshun couldn't accept the later memories and didn't know how the original owner died. However, she thought that Mo was probably dead. After all, the combination of the two poisons had already invaded his internal organs. Death was already an inevitable thing. Host, have you accepted all the memories? Now, I'll take you back to 3 days before the original owner died. The host. The original owner and the male lead died at the same time. If you reverse time in this ending, you will gain all the experience points. Unseal the memory that originally belonged to you. Would you let me off so easily? If the host fails, the host will enter the second space-time, which is 1,000 years later. Luo Qingshun expresses that she has just accepted such a heavy memory. Suddenly, he had to enter this world by himself. His heart was filled with fear and unease. The original owner's thoughts continued to infect her, making her feel like she was suffocating. Favorable impression points. The male lead's favorability towards the original owner is 50%. So little? In the end, it's more guilt. The system said it very tactfully, but Luo Qingshun could roughly understand. When Mo was at his loneliest, the original owner resolutely stood by his side. And when the original owner needed help the most, Mo wasn't there. Some knots were destined to never be untied. Not related to life and death. Who would be afraid of death? Chapter 2265. Early winter. Snowflakes the size of goose feathers fell from the sky. She narrowed her eyes, her heart filled with mixed feelings. She couldn't say she liked him, but she also couldn't say she disliked him. She wore a dark purple soft silver lily dress. Her long fine black hair was inserted with a beaded flower hairpin. Standing in the snow, she looked especially elegant and refined. The path she took in the palace every day was the same, passing through the imperial garden full of plum blossoms. On the left was the Hall of Supreme Harmony, where morning court was held, and on the right was Mo's palace. These days, his body was getting worse and worse. He almost never got out of bed. When Luo Qingshun walked to his side step by step, his eyelids moved, but he never opened his eyes. She was guarding him like this, knowing when he would return. She went to the library to read some information about poisons. This kind of slow-acting poison was called something from the Phoenix dynasty. The current Mo was already beyond cure. There was no cure. Luo Qingshun put down the book and took a deep breath, her eyes slightly red. No way, no way, no way. She had no way to change the outcome. She could only wait for his death. That was really a suffocating matter. 3 days later, winter solstice. Mo's personal eunuch Li came to Glimmer Hall to find her, bringing her the news that Mo had woken up. This might be the last time he would wake up. You came. His voice was very soft, as if he didn't have much strength, but he reached out to grab her wrist. At that time, he was the most handsome man in the entire Mo dynasty. But now, his temples were already gray. The palace maid brought the medicine. She gently shook her head and said, "Take it away." Now, whether he drank it or not, it didn't seem important. But he opened his eyes and said in a spoiled manner, "This is the only thing you made for me. You must drink it." She didn't reply, only watching him drink the medicine, then leaned heavily on her shoulder. The cold wind blew in from outside the window. Her body slightly trembled, suddenly feeling a bit scared. She saw him strenuously pick up the quilt and wrap her up. "After I leave, you have to take good care of yourself. Eat whatever you want. If you're full, don't force yourself. Don't be afraid. I've already taken care of everything. including the personal guards that you're most worried about. Your Majesty, don't speak nonsense. She forced herself to speak in a gentle voice, but her heart twitched and she felt extremely uncomfortable. I'm dying, I know. He slowly raised his hand, and his slightly cold voice carried a touch of floating. He gently touched her face and said, "Don't be afraid. No one can bully you anymore." Luo Qingqian's eyes trembled. She wanted to say something, but she didn't dare to open her mouth. With such a sorrowful atmosphere surrounding her, she was afraid that she would burst into tears the moment she opened her mouth. Although it was the original owner's story, at this moment, she felt as if she was experiencing it herself. It was so sad. "Girl, I'm sorry." His voice trembled, as if he was using the last of his strength to speak into her ear. "I might not be able to repay what I owe you in this lifetime. If there's a next life," he paused for a moment, and his voice was choked with sobs. He buried himself in her arms and said, "I'm here for you, okay? Next life, next life, next life." What a distant promise. If they couldn't complete it with all their strength in this lifetime, what use would there be in the next life? "You answer me." After a moment of silence, he spoke with difficulty, as if he was waiting for her answer. He owed her too much. The guilt made him unable to like anyone else, unable to love anyone else. In the end, there had to be an ending. Chapter 2266. Luo Qingqian could feel the person leaning on her slowly fall asleep. No, he should be dead. The snow outside the window drifted in little by little, bringing with it a touch of coldness. She lowered her head and gently hugged Mo Yi. She didn't know what to say, whether to cry or to calm down. In her blank mind, the system's voice slowly sounded. "Because the host's first space failed, you can now choose whether to enter the second space." The system's voice was very deep, not as playful as it was before. It probably also knew that she was in a bad mood. "The space-time transition will take place one day later at this hour. The host can take care of the following funeral matters." After Mo Ye's death, the entire country mourned. The entire Mo dynasty was under her control. She recommended several ministers who supported the country and gave the throne to Mo Lin. That was Mo Ye's youngest nephew, and also his only surviving nephew. She brought Mo Ye's cenotaph back to Shimmer Palace and placed 2 jars of his favorite peach blossom wine in front of him. Everything seemed so peaceful. The palace maids and servants didn't know what she wanted to do, but Mo Ye's personal eunuch knew a thing or two. Just now, this servant saw the Empress find someone to get some kerosene. He paused and looked at her with an aged expression on his wrinkled face. His Majesty only wanted the best for the Empress in his life. His Majesty put the Empress first in everything. This servant has seen so many people, but I've never seen someone as infatuated as His Majesty. Luo Qingqian pursed her lips and nodded faintly. "I know. So the Empress can't." He sighed softly. "The Empress, you must live well for His Majesty." She didn't say anything else and walked towards the cenotaph. Sitting down cross-legged, she closed her eyes and slowly said, "You may leave." With a deep sigh, the eunuch slowly retreated. She opened a jar of wine and took a sip. The air was filled with the faint fragrance of peach blossoms, intoxicating. "Then let's meet again in 1,000 years. I wonder if you'll still remember me." She took another sip and took out a basin of kerosene and a flamethrower from an exquisite box at the side. "I hope that the scenery there is beautiful. I hope that the story there is moving. I hope that there is no more sadness there." She closed her eyes and blew out the tongue of flame. She loosened her fingers and slowly let it fall. In an instant, the surroundings were ablaze. She gently picked up the cenotaph and hugged it to her chest, waiting for the time to travel. The entire palace instantly fell into another uproar, but she seemed to be unable to hear anything. Glimmer Palace, what a nice name. Then, she would just end it where it started. There were no ifs in this period of time. She would decide the ending of the story. Countless clamorous noises rang in his ears. It seemed like there were people constantly rushing in. The fire was very big, blinding his eyes. "We don't owe each other anything. How about we start from the beginning?" Even if she came, she would be the female lead. In that case, All the love and hatred in the past would disappear with death. No one was wrong, whether it was Mo Yi or the host. What was wrong was fate. They met at the wrong time, so they wouldn't have a good ending. Then, 1,000 years later, at least they would meet at the right time. Ding! Congratulations to the host for entering the second space. The male lead no longer has the memories of the past life, and the host has all the memories. Time? Chapter 2267. Qing Air has already been asleep for 14 years. You said that she would wake up when she was 14 years old. Now that it's almost over, why is Qing Air still asleep? The white-clothed man, standing to the side, frowned slightly. His white face revealed a cold aura, but it hindered his indescribable appearance. Proud and handsome, he slowly raised his right hand, pinched his fingers, and said, "The laws of heaven, the reincarnation of all things, the divination shouldn't be wrong. But when I went to the Snow Lotus Ice Cellar today, she was still asleep. No matter how much I talked to her, she didn't respond. The time of awakening might not be so accurate. Your Majesty can wait a few more days." Mo Yi slightly nodded, his clear eyes carrying a dark light. Your Majesty, the princess is awake." The man in the dragon robe was excited and immediately said, "Quick, quick, quick, bring me to see her." Luo Yu, the current emperor, had a position above tens of thousands of people and was very infatuated with love. In his life, he only loved one person, and that was his only empress, Feng Exing. But he and the empress were inseparable day and night, and only had one daughter, Luo Qingchen. But the sad thing was this girl fell into a deep sleep from the day she was born. She was only in a deep sleep, but she didn't die. Even her eating, drinking, and defecating could be taken care of by palace maids, no different from normal. Her appearance became more and more beautiful day by day, but she just couldn't wake up. Just as Luo Yu was in despair, Mo Yi appeared. He claimed to be a heaven's fate master, proficient in yin and yang and the 5 elements, and protected the heavenly fate. He told Luo Yu that Miss Luo would wake up when she was 14 years old. Luo Yu was very happy after hearing this news, and let Mo Yi stay in the palace. He rewarded her with 10,000 taels of gold and silver, and wanted to give her a promotion. But he rejected all of these. He said that he only wanted one person, and that was the Empress' younger sister, Fengling Air. The name Fengling Air could be said to be very famous in Chang and City. Before Feng Xian married the current emperor, she was already famous in Chang and City, and was the first singer in Chang and City. She had once performed the rainbow dress dance in the dark night, which made countless officials and nobles submit to her. However, she was undisciplined by nature. The men beside her always had won, but none of them could enter her eyes. She was proud and indulgent. The more no one dared to do something, the more she wanted to try it. In the deep winter, everyone wore brocade and cotton-padded jackets, but she liked to wear transparent white gauze. Her graceful figure and enchanting makeup often charmed all the men on Chang and Street. Of course, such a woman could enter the eyes of men, but it was very difficult for her to enter the eyes of women. After all, over the years, Fengling Air's reputation in Chang and was mostly debauched and vulgar, except for her superb singing and dancing skills. But because she was a relative of the royal family, the commoners couldn't say much. However, where there were people, there would always be right and wrong. There would always be 1 or 2 sentences that would reach Luo Yu's ears. Therefore, he did not like Fengling Air very much. It was just that his empress doted on her younger sister. Although there were many people who asked for her marriage these years, as the emperor, he did not agree to any of them. Now, for the sake of their only daughter, he naturally agreed to Mo Yi. Chapter 2268. What position does the emperor wish to bestow upon me? Mo Yi narrowed his eyes, a trace of coldness appearing between his brows. What position does young Master Mo want? You can tell me directly. Luo Yu was very straightforward, allowing him to choose for himself. After all, if his precious daughter could wake up, any gold or silver position would mean nothing. Mo Yi narrowed his eyes and said, "How about being a winemaker? You Why would you want such an occupation? Luo Yu was naturally very shocked. After all, being a winemaker was only a 7th-ranked official in the palace. Although it was easy, it did not have much power. He did not understand why Mo Yi clearly intended to stay in the palace. But when faced with the emperor, he did not boldly request for a better position. Mo Yi heard that Miss Ling has always liked to drink wine, especially when she sings or dances. Because of this, he wants to become a winemaker. He had always loved peach blossoms since he was young. There was no reason for it. You're very thoughtful. Luo Yu stroked his beard and nodded when he heard this. Furthermore, he promised that if the princess woke up, he would grant him another wish as long as his wish was fulfilled. Host has arrived at the second spacetime. When the system's mechanical voice sounded in her ears, she slowly opened her eyes. She saw that her surroundings were covered in ice and snow. She was lying on an ice bed, surrounded by 7 to 8 palace maids and eunuchs. They were all staring at her with wide eyes. Their expressions seemed to be excited, but she could not hear what they were saying clearly. She frowned slightly and wanted to slowly raise her hand, but found that she did not have any strength. After a while, a supreme being wearing a dragon robe rushed in. Behind him were 2 imperial physicians holding sandalwood chests. The surrounding sounds seemed to gradually become clearer. The noisy chatter was like a shock wave that continuously entered her ears. She only frowned and looked around. There was not a single familiar face. Luo Dynasty. The emperor in front of her seemed a little familiar, but he was not similar to official Luo from before. He was more good-natured, with more gentleness in his eyes. Quick, take the princess's pulse. Yes, your majesty. Princess? Luo Qingxin's mind was spinning rapidly. Even if it was the Luo dynasty, it was not surprising that she was a princess. Looking at the emperor's anxious look, her status shouldn't be low. It seems that the story of the second universe seems to be a little better for her. At least in terms of status, she didn't lose to anyone. Although her royal highness has awakened, her body is still very weak. The imperial physician said she should be transferred to a warm place. This humble subject will brew the medicine. Go. Luo Yu ordered twice and immediately sat beside Luo Qingxin. He gently held her hand and said, Qing'er, don't worry. I'm your father. I won't be cold anymore. His eyes were slightly red, which did not match the cold dragon robe on his body at all. All of a sudden, even though she was in a world of ice and snow, she felt exceptionally warm. Yes, she nodded. Her voice was very soft, but she used all of her strength. When Luo Yu heard this, she was so excited that she almost cried. She was escorted into a magnificent bedchamber. When she passed through the door, she slightly nodded her head and looked at the plaque. There were 3 big words written on it, Glimmer Palace. It seems that where it began was where it ended. Then where it ended was where it began. Chapter 2269. The first day after she woke up, she didn't see anyone other than her father and mother. Because she didn't have the original owner's memories, she didn't know anything about the story of this world. Luo Qingxin could only find out about this world from the palace maids, as well as the simple power of the court and the harem. Of course, there were also the names that had already been engraved in her mind. For example, Mo Yi. For example, Feng Ling Air. Fate was really strange. 1,000 years ago, Feng Ling Air was a princess, but 1,000 years later, she was a princess. Moreover, her identity was very awkward. She was her mother's little sister. In terms of seniority, she probably had to address her as Annie. She didn't know if the grudges from 1,000 years ago should be brought to the future. But even if they weren't enemies, they could never become friends. As for Mo Yi, she accidentally heard from the palace maids that he was a heaven's fate master. She had been asleep for 14 years. When she woke up, he had calculated that it was just right. Only, she heard that he had a condition, which was to enter the palace and become a winemaker. She didn't know why Mo Yi chose such a position. Not only did it not match his identity in this world, it also didn't match his identity in his previous life. After traveling through 1,000 years, she saw Mo Yi again in the afternoon 3 days later. She was wearing pearl cotton shoes and holding a walking stick. She was wearing a pomegranate red brocade embroidered with flowers and butterflies. She came to the back garden by herself. Stepping on the vast expanse of white snow, one would feel a kind of soft cotton, but after a few seconds, one would feel a burst of heart-piercing cold. Her body wasn't good. Probably because she had been lying down for too long, she would gasp for breath every few steps. The palace maids would always fight to help her. If she didn't get any exercise, she wouldn't make any progress. Suddenly a cold wind blew. She narrowed her eyes and used all her strength to stagger back with her walking stick. Just as she was about to fall into the snow, a warm hand wrapped around her waist. There was a faint fragrance in the air, as well as a familiar scent. She nodded abruptly, and what entered her eyes was that familiar face. The reflection of the white snow was so beautiful that it was indescribable. At this moment, she was inexplicably nervous. She wanted to rely on her own strength to stand up, but found that she couldn't muster any strength at all. "Your Highness!" He bent down slightly and picked her up by the waist. His voice carried a touch of coldness as he said, "Your Highness' body is still not suitable for walking around." She was only 14 years old, so she looked very small in front of him. When he carried her in his arms, he felt like they were a big brother and a little sister. "I just came to take a look at the scenery." Luo Qingxun blinked her eyes in a panic and said, "The plum blossoms in winter are always very beautiful. Plum wine tastes even better." He chuckled. "Miss Feng likes it very much." "Feng Ling air." She silently muttered these 3 words in her heart and felt an inexplicable feeling of suffocation. Could it be that he really stayed in the palace for Feng Ling air? Why? Feng Ling air's reputation was so bad. So why did Mo Yi stay in the palace for her? He didn't care that he went from being an aloof heaven's fate master to a winemaker with almost no status. Seeing her lower her head and not say anything, he suddenly said, Perhaps your Highness doesn't know, but Miss Feng is the Empress' little sister, which is your concubine mother. When your body is better, the Empress will tell you about the matters in the palace." Chapter 2270. She had thought of 10,000 opportunities for them to meet again, but she had never thought that it would end like this. The current Mo Yi felt very unfamiliar to her. It was probably because whether it was her memories or the Mo Yi she saw in her eyes. His pitch-black eyes could always reflect her figure. But right now, she felt that those beautiful eyes were filled with an indescribable darkness, as well as an indescribable complex emotion. After she said that she did not want to hear, Mo Yi did not say anything else. He just quietly hugged her as they passed through the imperial garden. The plum blossom petals fluttered down, bringing with them a faint desolation. Returning to Shimmer Hall, she thought about it and felt that her words had been too stiff. After sitting down, she looked at him and said, "Young Master Mo, I was a bit impatient with my words just now. I still have to thank young Master for sending me back. Protecting the princess' safety is the right thing to do. It is also the responsibility of every servant in the palace." His words were very polite, but they made people feel distant and unfamiliar. "I heard that young Master Mo is a Heaven's Mandate Master. I don't know why you like this palace and want to become a winemaker." She was beating around the bush to confirm the doubts in her heart. Did he really like winemaking, or was it for Feng Ling air? She could not believe those rumors. As long as he said that he did not believe it, she would not believe it. After all, this man clearly knew that someone was plotting against him 1,000 years ago, but even in the end, he was still willing to endure it. Time passed, 1,000-year love. Even though 1,000 years had passed, even though he no longer had those memories sealed in the depths of his mind. But she did not believe that before meeting her, knowing her, and understanding her, he would fall in love with Feng Ling air. She did not believe it. "This one only heard that young Lady Feng likes fruit wine, so I came to the palace to find a position to make some good wine for her." Luo Qingxun did not know what kind of reaction she had. She just stood there in a daze, unable to say a single word. This continued until Eunuch Li walked in to pass on a message for Feng Ling air. It seemed that the plum wine that Mo Yi had brewed for her last night was to her liking, so she summoned him to the Hall of Moonlight. "Your Highness, I will take my leave now." He cupped his hands and bowed, as if he had received some incredible good news. He was full of anticipation and didn't want to stay for even a moment longer. Young Master Mo, Luo Qingshun, pursed her lips, her clear eyes flashing with unwillingness. This was the first time she had this kind of feeling. She was standing in the same position as the female supporting character and saying those bad things about the female lead. She had never been in such a position before, and it did not feel good. Although I haven't been awake for long, I occasionally heard from the palace maids that Feng Ling, concubine Feng, suffered a stroke in Chong and City. "Why, Your Highness, she's your aunt." Mo Yi directly interrupted her, a faint dark light flashing in his deep eyes. His thin lips softly said, "No matter what others say about her, you can't say that. Such a young face, such clear eyes, should not be mixed with these messy things." But for Luo Qingshun, these words were so heavy that her nose turned sour and she almost cried. For someone like her who had a complete memory for the more than 100 lives of the Luo family engraved in her mind. Their lives were too light, and their souls were too heavy. They had long forgotten the memories from 1,000 years ago, but she had not. Chapter 2271. After a while, the corners of Luo Qingshun's lips rose slightly. She pulled out a faint, bitter smile and said, "Since young Master Mo has said this, what should I say? Princess, rest well. This humble servant will go to the Moonlight Palace, first to prevent Miss Feng from waiting too long." He still cupped his hands. His tone was just as humble as before, but there was a hint of anxiousness. "I won't send you off." Luo Qingshun's cold eyes narrowed. She turned around and was unwilling to say another word. Didn't they say that she would write the story? Why didn't Mo Yi give her the chance? Could it be that she was just a passerby in 1,000 years of time? Or did she have to see with her own eyes how Mo Yi fell in love with Feng Ling Air? She really didn't dare believe that a man who gave everything like this would bury his guilt deep in his heart. In another time and space, he would go in the opposite direction from her. Mo Yi was clearly stunned for a moment. His brows furrowed slightly, and a faint ripple appeared in his deep, ink-like eyes. Only he knew that his heart was inexplicably moved. "This humble servant will leave." These were the last two sentences they said when they first met. "I won't send you off. This humble servant will leave." In the next half a month, they didn't see each other again. She heard that Feng Ling Air liked Mo Yi's wine very much. She would often dance at her Moonlight Palace when she drank too much. She wore light muslin and thin clothes, enchanting and charming. The rumors in the palace gradually spread to Luo Qingshun's ears. They were more or less unpleasant to hear. For example, she saw Feng Ling Air dance for the winemaker Mo Yi. For example, they had long been intimate. But Luo Qingshun was very clear that Mo Yi had never stayed overnight in the Moonlight Palace, not even once. Even though he went to the Moonlight Palace frequently, the time he stayed was very short. She knew this, but she didn't understand it. She never went to see Feng Ling Air. Feng Ling Air also never came to see her. She was hostile, full of hostility. But she kept telling herself, don't worry about it. Because she had been lying in bed for 16 years, her reflexes were very slow. She would feel tired after taking a few more steps. It was late winter, and it was snowing heavily every day. The palace maids were afraid that she would catch a cold, so they wrapped her in a thick coat before letting her go out. She liked to sit in the Drunken Dream Pavilion in the Imperial Garden the most, because this was the place Mo Yi had to pass by on his way to the Hall of Moonlight. Every day, when the sun set, Mo Yi would come out of the Moonlight Palace and pass by the Imperial Garden. The warm light shone on his stunning side profile, making him look so beautiful. Luo Qingshun would always sit in the Pavilion of Drunken Dreams and take a few more glances at him. Looking at his current youthful appearance, she would always think of that winter solstice day when he was on the verge of death. Every time she recalled this scene, she would tell herself that she could still persevere. If God did not give her the so-called love at first sight, then he would have to work hard to make her see him. Such an outstanding Luo Qingshun. Because of this, she personally planned a vulgar and unbearable scene, such as those fainting scenes that would happen in the depths of the palace. Since her body was delicate and weak, pretending to faint on such a cold day shouldn't be too clumsy. Everything was ready. She wore a plain white pleated dress with flowers and held an ink-colored umbrella in her hand, standing in the center of the imperial garden. Because of half a month of hard work, she could no longer hold a cane, but standing for a long time still made her feel strained. Chapter 2272. 1, 2, 3. She counted for 3 seconds in her heart. The moment she saw his figure, her body went soft, and she fainted on the ground without saying a word. An anxious shout suddenly sounded in her ears, "Your Highness." Luo Qingqian's heart was filled with joy. She had the feeling of Jiang Taigong fishing. The willing ones are hooked. After all, she still caught Mo Ye's attention. He quickly ran to her and sat down on the cold snow. He gently held her in his arms and anxiously said, "Your Highness, can you hear me?" Luo Qingqian rolled her eyes and pretended to frown in pain. She muttered, "I'm just a bit dizzy. I suddenly don't have any strength." Her voice was very soft. She tried her best to lower her voice so that the other side could feel her weakness. Mo Ye frowned. His right hand gently touched her forehead. His cool and pleasant voice slowly came. "You have a fever. I'll take you back to your room first." "Fever? Is this true?" "Young Master Mo Ye, I'm just pretending to faint. Okay?" Probably because she was dizzy. This time Mo Ye did not princess carry her. Instead, he carefully carried her on his back. His shoulders were very broad, and there was a kind of thick warmth. She always felt that lying on his shoulders made her feel like she could fall into a deep sleep. Peace of mind and warmth. After an unknown amount of time, she heard the sound of urgent footsteps. She felt cold and hot all over, and her back was covered in cold sweat. She was just pretending to faint, so why did she feel so uncomfortable? After an unknown amount of time, someone fed her a bowl of extremely bitter medicine. After swallowing it with difficulty, a pair of familiar hands touched her lips and fed her a peach blossom fruit. The fruit was very sweet and had the fragrance of peach blossoms. It completely covered the bitterness in her mouth. This night, she slept very well. This sleep was very peaceful. When she woke up again, it was still night. The moment she opened her eyes, she saw Mo Ye standing not far away. This time, he wore a moon-white robe and stood in front of the window with his hands clasped behind his back. His tall and straight figure made people feel lonely. Luo Qingqian felt her body was very light. She rolled her eyes and sat up on her own. She blinked her eyes and said, "Young Master Mo." And Mo Ye was slightly taken aback. He abruptly turned around and narrowed his eyes at her. He leaned against the moonlight, his deep eyes bottomless. A few seconds later, he hurriedly walked towards her and stopped very close to her. He reached out and touched her forehead. "Your fever is finally gone. How many hours have I slept?" Luo Qingqian frowned, feeling a little embarrassed. It was clearly a script that he had written himself. Why did it suddenly go astray? "Her Highness has already slept for 3 days and 3 nights. Mo Ye sighed. His eyes flashed with worry as he said, "You were in a daze and refused to take your medicine, so I brought you some candied fruits." "Peach blossom-flavored candied fruits?" Luo Qingqian pursed her lips, recalling the taste of her sleep. Mo Ye heard this and said with a gentle smile, "You actually remember it clearly." "Of course." Luo Qingqian proudly raised her brows and said, "My memory is very good. But this humble one remembers telling the princess not long ago that you have just recovered from a serious illness, so you can't walk around in this cold weather." Mo Ye paused and said, "I don't know if the princess still remembers." "Yes." Cuckoo. Luo Qingqian cleared her throat and said, "That is all in the past, so let's not talk about it. How about we talk about something else?" Chapter 2273. Luo Qingqian thought about it, and her lips curled into a faint smile as she said, "I don't know why, but I suddenly want to drink wine. I wonder if young Master Mo's wine is really that good? To make concubine Mother Feng like it that much." She had been in this world for a while, but she still hadn't seen Feng Ling Air. She heard that there were guests coming to her moonlight palace every day. Every night, there was music that filled the northeast corner of the palace. What kind of wine does the princess want to drink? Emoyi looked at her tender cheeks and clear eyes. He felt an inexplicable throbbing in his heart, but he hid this throbbing in the bottom of his heart and didn't tell anyone else. Peach blossom wine. Does young master Emo know how to make it? Luo Qingshun looked at his handsome face, and memories of the past slowly appeared in her mind. In a lonely and quiet corner of the palace, there was a peach blossom tree that wasn't too tall or too short. With a gentle breeze, the peach blossom petals slowly fell down. A pot of wine was raised as they looked at each other. But it isn't the season for peach blossoms. Emoyi narrowed his eyes and said, "But if the princess wants to drink, this humble servant naturally has a way." When he said this, the originally dim light in his eyes suddenly flashed with a bright light. At this moment, she heard the system prompt that she hadn't heard for a long time. Ding! Affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 10%. The system wouldn't lie. Although she felt that she was still very far from him, this prompt told her that at least he still put her in his heart. Actually, thinking about it, they had already done quite a bit. The first time was an accident, and the second time was deliberate. Although the script wasn't as perfect as she imagined, it wasn't as bleak as it seemed. "Your Highness, the seventh Mama of the Moonlight Palace is here to see you." The maid's voice interrupted their conversation. Luo Qingshun slightly knit her brows as her heart filled with dissatisfaction. "Let her wait outside." She narrowed her eyes, and her voice had a trace of coldness to it. The maid rarely saw Luo Qingshun like this, so she quickly moved back and said, "Yes." When she slowly left the room, "Emo," Yi finally said, "Although the princess fever is gone, you still have to drink the medicine. If you feel it's bitter, you can eat 2 more peach blossom candies." When he said this, it was like a big brother talking to a little sister, reminding and reminding. It was as if they had met for the first time 1,000 years ago. She was 7 years old, and he was 14. Now she was 14 years old, but she was still a child in his eyes. That impeccable face was filled with gentleness and gentleness, as if an elder was looking at a junior. She didn't like this feeling. In terms of seniority, she was someone who had lived for over 1,000 years. She either liked it or she didn't like it. She didn't need her brother's care for her sister. Emoyi, do you like Feng Ling? For such a direct host, even the system took in a cold breath. She was a direct person like this. She always followed the principle of using her hands and not her mouth to deal with people she hated. As for the person she liked, since she could get the answer, why would she hesitate? It really wasn't her style, and she didn't like it. Emoyi was stunned. His deep eyes looked at her for a while before he said, "I have no power or influence. How could I have the right to admire Miss Feng?" Luo Qingxin knew that he wanted to avoid it, but she didn't plan on giving him a chance to change the topic. Chapter 2274. The surrounding air seemed to freeze at this moment, and it was terrifyingly silent. "I wonder what kind of liking Princess is talking about." Emoyi narrowed his eyes, and his beautiful eyes flickered with a faint light. It was as if his entire body was filled with a dangerous aura, mysterious and steady. This feeling was very strange, and Luo Qingxun couldn't figure it out in a short time. "I'm talking about..." Just as she was about to speak, a sharp voice interrupted her. "Your Highness Princess, Seventh Mama requests an audience with Your Highness Princess." "Princess," this servant told her not to come in, but she knit her brows, and her eyes were cold. Looking at the arrogant Seventh Mama, she snorted, "Kneel down." Seventh Mama was stunned. She clearly didn't expect Luo Qingxun to speak to her like this. She could be considered an old person in the palace. Following by Feng Ling airside for many years, she could be considered to have some status. This princess had been asleep for 14 years and had just woken up. She didn't expect her to be so domineering. She pursed her lips and unwillingly knelt down, her eyes filled with disdain. "It seems you still don't understand the situation you're facing." Luo Qingxin's voice was very cold, and every word carried chill. She looked at her and said, I'm Imperial Father's only child, and my body isn't very good. Now that you've trespassed in a Glimmer Palace and worsened the princess's condition, what do you think your punishment should be? Hiss. The two little palace maids standing next to her sucked in a breath of cold air. After their princess woke up, her temper was very good. She had always been very gentle and kind to servants like them. This was the first time they saw her fierce appearance. In those clear and moving eyes, there was a faint killing intent. Seventh Mama swallowed her saliva, clearly a little nervous. She knew the princess's identity, but she was used to being arrogant in the palace. She hadn't met any fierce characters, so she was naturally a little arrogant. Your Highness Princess, this servant knows her mistake. But Miss Feng has ordered young Master M.O. to go to Moonlight Palace. Although she lowered her head and admitted defeat, Luo Qingchen knew that she was still a little unhappy. It wasn't a complete fear, but rather a forced attitude, which made her feel uncomfortable. The next second, she snorted coldly and narrowed her eyes. It seems that you still don't understand. She slowly walked forward and stood in front of her. She raised her chin so that her arrogant eyes were at the same level as her. She sneered and said, "If I faint here now, your entire family will be buried with me." Swish, swish, swish. No one knew if it was a coincidence or if it was done on purpose, but a gust of cold wind blew past and directly blew the west window open. The cold wind blew up her white dress and her fine black hair, bringing with it waves of coldness. Against the light, she could feel that Seventh Mama's face instantly paled and her lips were devoid of blood. A few seconds later, she seemed to come back to her senses. She hurriedly kowtowed and said, "Your Highness, please spare my life. Your Highness, please spare my life." Scram. Her words were concise and comprehensive, without the slightest trace of emotion in her tone. Seventh Mama staggered back and scrambled out of Shimmer Palace. She could clearly feel the coldness and killing intent that Luo Qingchen transmitted to her. It was as if she stayed for a few more seconds, her life would end here. Luo Qingchen withdrew her gaze and looked at Mo Yi. From beginning to end, he hadn't said a single word. He only used a probing gaze to look at her. Chapter 2275. Is it because you have a new level of respect for me? Luo Qingchen sneered. The moment she looked up, she met his deep eyes. Actually, when she said this, her tone was mocking. Half of it was mocking herself, and the other half was mocking Mo Yi. She didn't know what she was mocking. Perhaps it was because the beginning of the story wasn't so good. No, it's very imposing. After a long time, Mo Yi chuckled. There was a faint light in his eyes as he said, "I didn't expect such a small body to have so much power. So don't treat me like a child. I'm not." Luo Qingchen looked at him very seriously and said, "I've stopped being a child a long time ago." Mo Yi looked at her like this for a long time. Finally, he said, "The peach blossom wine will be sent to the princess in 3 days, but you can't drink too much. I can promise you the latter." Luo Qingchen looked up, a faint smile on her lips as she said, "The former won't do." "What does princess mean?" "Tomorrow." Luo Qingchen's eyes trembled as she said, "Young Master Mo can send concubine Feng different flavors of fruit wine every day. Then 1 day should be enough." He frowned, but didn't say anything. Luo Qingchen continued, "You'll belong to me tomorrow." He still frowned, then said, "All right." The next morning, she woke up very early. Her appetite was very good, and she ate twice as much breakfast as usual. The palace maids stood to the side, full of joy as they said, "Princess's complexion is much better. As servants, we are also very happy." Luo Qingchen chuckled and said, "You all have sweet mouths. It's probably because the princess showed off her power yesterday. The energy that was originally settled in her dantian was released, and her spirit came up." When Luo Qingchen heard this, she thought, "Little sisters, do you think this is a cultivation plane?" "But I heard, Yesterday, Seventh Mama went back and complained to Miss Feng. She said it was the first time in her life that she was humiliated in front of a junior." "Junior? Only she can say that." Another palace maid added, "In the palace, regardless of age, we are all servants. The princess is the master. How can there be any humiliation? Isn't it? Sure enough, like master, like servant. Luo Qingshun coldly snorted and said, "She doesn't even have the qualifications to be my servant. The servants of our Glimmer Palace Hall are all beautiful and cute." But reasonably speaking, this person called Seventh Mama was also arrogant enough. She clearly knew that she was the only princess of the current emperor, yet she still dared to be so rash in front of her. It seemed that Fengling air usually indulged her. Otherwise, she wouldn't be so unruly. Even so, she wanted to see what Fengling air was like in this world. Before that, she wanted to drink a cup of peach blossom wine that belonged to her. In the evening, Emoyi arrived as promised. He was holding a small jar of peach blossom wine and 2 cups. The refreshing peach blossom fragrance instantly awakened her taste buds. She slowly walked forward and looked up with a smile. It seems that young Master Emo is indeed a genius at brewing wine. This peach blossom wine must be very delicious. She was about to reach out to take it, but the other side withdrew his hand. Because of the difference in height, Luo Qingshun couldn't reach it even if she stood on tiptoe. The next second, she said in a somewhat angry voice, "Young Master Emo is really interesting. This peach blossom wine has already been delivered, but you're still not willing to give it up." Emoyi looked at her childish expression and sighed with his right hand. He couldn't help but pinch her nose and said, "Remember the ladder you promised me." As soon as his voice fell, he handed the jar of peach blossom wine to her. There was a faint trace of affection in his eyes. Chapter 2276. There was wine, peach blossoms, and affection. Suddenly, she felt that her mood was exceptionally good. The haze that had been hidden in her heart for the past few days had completely disappeared. It was like the iron tree in her heart had bloomed. Since there's good wine, why don't we choose a beautiful place to enjoy the scenery? Luo Qingshun shook the peach blossom wine in her hand, and her lips couldn't help revealing a smile. Emoyi thought for a bit and said, "Wear more clothes. It's snowing heavily outside." Actually, Luo Qingshun knew that there was no difference between this imperial palace and the one 1,000 years ago. Even the imperial garden was close to the Glimmer Palace, so she wanted to find it. She wanted to find the peach blossom tree where they had drunk wine together 1,000 years ago and admired the moon together. In a most southwest position, there was a small river and a water curtain next to a fake mountain. There was a bare tree that looked like an iron tree. Luo Qingshun slowly raised her head and looked around before saying, "It doesn't even bloom in the winter. How does your highness know what kind of tree this is?" Emoya's eyes were a bit surprised as he looked at her with a faint gaze. Luo Qingshun pursed her lips, and 1,000 years of memories flashed in her mind. After a while, she said, "Perhaps I've been here before. Your eyes show that you've been here with a very important person before." Emoya's eyes were a bit dejected, and his beautiful eyes revealed a bit of sadness as he said, "Is it someone you're thinking of?" Luo Qingshun heard this, and her right hand gently brushed the snow. She leaned against a tree stump and said, "It could be considered that. Is the princess playing with Emoyi?" He sat down beside her and said with a soft laugh, "You slept for 14 years before waking up." Although he gave her an excuse, she still felt that the past was not to her liking. For some reason, she suddenly wanted to know who the person she was thinking of was, even if there was no such person. As a Heaven's Mandate Master, could it be that you don't believe in past and present life? Luo Qingshun poured a cup of wine and took a sip. The cause of the past life, the effect of the future, past life and present life. His gaze was somewhat misty. He took Luo Qingshun's wine cup and drained it in one gulp. Naturally, I believe. He was right. As a Heaven's Fate Master, how could he not believe in past and present lives? Perhaps it was because of this belief that there was an indelible hatred in his heart. She drank one cup after another, a faint blush on her fair cheeks. She didn't know if it was because her body was weak or for some other reason, but she actually started to feel intoxicated. Slightly drunk, Emoya's image became a little blurry. "So, this is how it feels to be drunk. It seemed to be not bad." "Your Highness," Emoya's pleasant voice resounded in her ears. The air was filled with the thick fragrance of peach blossom wine, and the white snow fell one by one, creating a beautiful scene. Luo Qingchun softly replied with a dazed smile. Moe looked at her like this, falling into a daze. Even his heart couldn't help wildly beating. You're drunk, I know. She pursed her lips into a smile and said, I'm a bit dizzy. Let's go back. Don't. Let's drink 2 more cups. Be good. He rubbed her head with a pampering expression. She did not know if she was seeing things or not. Moe, I don't know how to chase after a person. Can you help me tell him not to make me feel sad? She softly grabbed his sleeve, like she was taking advantage of her drunkenness to say all the words in her heart. Moe's expression was a bit stunned. After a while, he said, The person your highness is thinking of? That's right. She nodded with a faint smile on her face. Chapter 2277. The snow seemed to have suddenly become heavier. He carried her step by step in the snow, the thick snow covering the deep footprints left behind by his boots. The light snowflakes fell bit by bit, landing on their hair. If they weren't careful, it was as if they had traveled through time and space, and their hair turned white. In a daze, she closed her eyes and gently patted his shoulder with a red face. He glanced sideways and met her half-closed eyes. She pouted and said with a silly smile, Actually, I'm very scared. I'm scared that even though I tried my best, I still couldn't reach the ending I wanted. There were many things in the world that didn't go your way. After going through so many worlds, she should have already understood. It was just that this love had spanned over 1,000 years. Waiting and being waited for, loving and being loved, those words that couldn't be said not long ago, those responses that couldn't be received not long ago. She hoped that she could obtain all the answers here. What kind of ending do you want? Moe naturally knew that she was drunk, so he asked this question. The restless words that were hidden in the depths of his heart could no longer be concealed under such a scene. That was the throbbing in the depths of his heart that no one knew about. He also knew that he had to stop here. No matter what kind of feelings he had, he should hide them all in the bottom of his heart and not tell anyone else. But at this moment, he suddenly wanted to be himself for once, be the real Moe for once. Luo Qingchun seriously thought about it when she heard this. She tilted her head and said, Actually, you can also like me. Just once is enough. Maybe you'll find that I have a lot of good points. Actually, she didn't know what she was saying. She always felt like she was dreaming. The vast expanse of white was like a dream. She could say whatever she wanted. This place was like a secret little paradise. For example, Moe pulled her body and steadied his back. The corner of his mouth unconsciously rose into a warm smile. For example, she was stumped by his sudden question. After thinking for a long time, she said, You're good-looking, and you're beautiful, and you're beautiful. In the next second, he stopped. Once again, she turned her head to look at him. Her dark eyes revealed a faint glimmer of light as she said, Turn around and take a look. Is it really that beautiful? Beautiful and beautiful? He didn't use the word princess, but you. Hearing this, Luo Qingchun moved her body behind him and stretched her neck in a very difficult way. She looked at him and said, Moe, did you see it clearly? When that pair of eyes that were as clear as water looked at him, Moe felt an inexplicable burning flame in his heart, spreading all the coldness in his body. In an instant, his gaze landed on the most alluring features of her face. When the icy snow slowly landed on his lips, he lowered his head slightly and sealed it with a kiss. White snowflakes fell bit by bit. She gently closed her eyes, and her originally rapid heartbeat slowed down. Moe's kiss was light and gentle. It was like the kiss of an angel, shallow and deep, without any impatience at all. They were in a secluded place like this. He carried her and used a very beautiful method to kiss her. The snow fell, and as a destiny master, he named this moment as eternity. Ding! Affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 30%. Wherever eternity goes, there is love. Born from love, it would never end. Chapter 2278. When she opened her eyes again, it was already the next day. Luo Qingchun felt like she had a beautiful dream, a sweet and bitter dream. In the dream, there was a white snowy ground like a dreamy scene. Emoyi carried her on his back, walking and stopping, his eyes filled with reluctance. She could feel his reluctance, as well as the sadness and desolation in his heart. She could not understand his desolation, but she could feel his heartache. This kind of feeling had also occurred to the original owner. 1,000 years ago, she had returned to the palace. She had completely hidden her true self. Every word she said, every action she did, it was all to expand her power and obtain what she wanted. The current MO gave her this kind of feeling. He was very conflicted between love and hate, conflicted between right and wrong. This was what Luo Qinshan could feel. As for why she had this kind of feeling, she did not know. "Your Highness, you're finally awake." 2 palace maids walked in and helped her wash her face with water. "Last night, young Master Mo accompanied your Highness for a long time, saying that your Highness drank too much, but your body has recovered quite a bit. I really don't feel that weak anymore." Luo Qinshan stretched her body and said, "Where's young Master Mo? He didn't come today?" The palace maids looked at each other, their expressions a bit awkward. In the depths of the palace, it was necessary for the servants to understand what their master liked. As her personal palace maids, they naturally knew what their Highness liked. So, regarding the matter of Mo staying in the Moon Essence Palace last night, even if the palace was abuzz with this matter, they did not want their princess to know. "Looking at your expressions," Luo Qinshan took back her smile and slightly looked up, her long eyelashes trembling as she said, "Something should have happened, right? Your Highness." One of the palace maids came forward and pursed her lips. "Actually, there are all kinds of rumors in the palace. You can't believe them all." "Rumors?" Luo Qinshan couldn't help but laugh at herself. "You have to tell me what kind of rumor it is so that I can judge whether it's true or false." The 2 young maidservants looked at each other. The palace maid standing behind them said, "Reporting to your Highness, I heard that young Master Mo stayed the night at Moonlight Palace." Hiss! At this moment, they simultaneously felt waves of cold air enveloping the entire Glimmer Palace. The window from north to south happened to be open, and the feathery snow flew in, some of it falling in her hot tea. She didn't want to change the cup. Instead, she gently slid the cup lid down, blew on it, and took a sip. At this moment, the boiling hot tea poured into her ice-cold heart, spreading through her blood bit by bit. When the palace maids saw her like this, they all knelt down in panic and murmured, "Your Highness, we only heard rumors. Your Highness, please don't take it to heart." If they hadn't seen their princess reprimand 7th Mama before, they wouldn't have such a feeling of fear towards her. After seeing it, they knew that even though this princess had been asleep for 14 years, her aura surpassed all the masters they had seen before. Moreover, just in terms of language learning, Her Highness was already different from normal people. Therefore, for things that weren't completely confirmed, as servants, they naturally didn't dare to gossip in front of her. Chapter 2279. Moye, Moye, Moye. He was Moye. How could he do such a thing? There had to be a reason for staying the night in Moonlight Palace. It seemed like she really did need to meet that so-called concubine, Feng Ling. As her mother's blood-related sister, she completely ignored the matter of her niece waking up after 14 years of sleep. It seemed like even after 1,000 years, even if they had become relatives, no matter how she looked at it, their relationship was still not that good. Otherwise, this relative was close enough. It was not reasonable that she had not gone to see her after waking up for so long. That's right. Rumors are just rumors. How could they be true? Your Highness, don't worry. When your body is better, you can have Mo Yi Gongzi take you to play every day? That's right. Whether it is age or appearance, your Highness clearly has the advantage. The little maidservants seemed to be eager to protect their master. Every word was filled with thoughts of her. Of course, to put another way, this was also a disguised form of flattery, although it sounded pretty good. Don't compare me to her. Luo Qinshan slightly nodded and said with the grandeur of a princess, she doesn't have the qualifications to compare me, no matter if it was 1,000 years ago or now 1,000 years later. Ling heir would never have the qualifications to compare to her. That had never changed. Yes, Your Highness, these servants won't dare in the future. They replied at the same time. Luo Qingxin nodded and said with a light smile, even if you want to meet this princess concubine, you should still dress up. Your Highness meaning is, you can lose people, but you can't lose. Half an hour later, the little palace maids were excitedly putting on makeup for her. Actually, this body was very beautiful. It was not a cold face, but a kind of clear spirit with a touch of cuteness. Especially the eyes. There was a feeling that if you looked at her a few more times, all your worries would disappear. Moe always liked to stare into her eyes. After a long time, he would sigh softly, his gaze filled with sorrow. She couldn't understand him, but when she looked at his eyes, she had the urge to hug him. She wanted to treat him well. She wanted to continue their 1,000-year love. Pity, he didn't seem to give her the chance. After dressing up, she put on a moon-blue palace dress embroidered with clouds and clouds, and held a golden palace fan with an ivory handle. Her long black hair was combed into a hibiscus bun, and there was a chrysanthemum-patterned enamel bouyao on the top of her head. She rarely dressed so luxuriously, and this was the first time. After all, they were going to fight. If they didn't have enough equipment, wouldn't they be defeated at any time? She only brought along 2 personal palace maids. Passing through the imperial garden, she headed towards Ling heir's moonlight palace. The moment she stood outside the palace, she couldn't help but admire Ling heir's popularity. Starting from the stone slope, there was a mountain of gifts. Because of the palace's ban, the young masters outside the palace, and even the sons of high officials and nobles, couldn't enter the palace every day. They could only use their connections to send gifts in to express their feelings. What they didn't know was that Ling heir didn't even see most of these gifts. People were like this. When there were many people who liked them, sometimes they didn't care. There were so many people who liked Ling heir, but she kept Moe. Your Highness, Seeing her stop in place, the palace maid asked, "Are we still going in?" Chapter 2280. As soon as she entered the door, a clear voice came into her ears. The bright moon in the sky, just like Chong, leaving the moon palace. Just like Chong, descending from the 9 heavens and landing in the Guanghan Palace. In the Guanghan Palace, the jade bridge leans against the railing. The mandarin ducks come to play in the water. The golden carp faces up on the water. The water faces up, the birds fly in the sky. That was Ling heir singing an opera. The air was filled with the faint fragrance of pear blossoms. It turned out that Moe made pear blossoms wine for her. Luo Qingxin frowned and walked in the direction of a stone road. Just after a few steps, she saw a familiar face. Wasn't that 7th Mama, whom she treated coldly a few days ago? Oh, isn't this Your Highness the Princess? Probably because she was in her own territory, this 7th Mama had become a lot bolder. Why don't you salute Your Royal Highness? The little palace maid standing beside Luo Qingxin didn't seem to like 7th Mama's face and directly retorted. Luo Qingxin silently gave her a thumbs up. She was really a little girl of her family. She could be taught. You see, didn't I forget? 7th Mama's mouth twitched. With an unwilling look, she quickly bowed and said, "Greetings, Your Highness." Luo Qingxin coldly narrowed her eyes and looked at her with a slight chill. "Did you salute just now? I didn't see it." You. 7th Mama looked like she was eating dirt. She held back her anger and saluted again. "Your Royal Highness." This time, she learned to be smart. After saluting, she paused and said, "Your Royal Highness, did you see it this time?" "Of course not." Luo Qingxin shrugged and said, "You call this a salute? I have been in the palace for more than 10 years and have served. It seems that you still don't know my temper." Luo Qingxin narrowed her cold eyes and said, "Take her away and report her to father for the crime of assassinating the princess." "Yes, Your Royal Highness." "Your Highness." 7th Mama was slightly stunned. After a few seconds, she came back to her senses and hurriedly said, "Princess, you're trying to pin a groundless crime on this old servant. Since you know that I have this ability, why do you still have to act so high and mighty?" Luo Qingchun sneered. You really don't deserve it. She waved her hand, indicating that the little palace maid could go and report. Little did she know that at this time, the door to the inner hall in front of her slowly opened. In the next second, a graceful woman walked out from inside. She was wearing a white veil and had a graceful figure. Fengling Air. She muttered her name in her heart, and the hatred in her heart did not dissipate with time. The memories of the past were still vivid in her mind. The lives of more than 100 people in the Luo clan, as well as her mother's dying instructions, were constantly reminding her. He had spent 1,000 years to come here. He was not going to submit to humiliation, nor would he allow himself to be bullied. You are. Fengling Air frowned, as if she did not recognize who Luo Qingchen was. At this time, Mo Yi came out. He was wearing a white robe, and his expression was somewhat cold. After faintly glancing at her, he turned to look at Fengling Air and said, "This is the princess who has been sleeping for 14 years. Oh, so it's you." Fengling Air glanced at her and said in a light tone, "What business do you have here? When your servant first came to my palace, she was very unruly. I have already told father to take her to the Supreme Court for interrogation." Miss Feng, this servant. Seventh Mama's face instantly changed. All kinds of grievances appeared, and she almost shed tears. Chapter 2281. You don't need to say it. Fengling Air gently shook her head. Her enchanting red phoenix eyes narrowed as she curled her lips into a smile. Seventh Mama has been in the palace for many years and has also served your mother. Even if there's no merit, there is still hard work. Isn't it a bit unreasonable to enter the Supreme Court? What does it have to do with me? Luo Qingchen's cold eyes narrowed as she said each word like a gem. This servant doesn't know my status, but you should know. My imperial father only has me as a princess. How much do you think a servant's life is worth? Seventh Mama was startled, and her face didn't look too good. But it was different from that day in Glimmer Palace Hall. After all, this was her own territory. With her master's protection, she wasn't afraid. Fengling Air looked her up and down, then glanced at Mo Yi. After a few seconds, her eyes lit up, and a faint smile appeared on the corner of her mouth. Princess is right. This servant's life is naturally worthless. Miss Feng quickly apologized to Her Royal Highness. Even I can't bear the crime of assassinating the princess. Fengling Air always had a smile on the corner of her mouth, but Luo Qingchen knew very well that this smile was full of ridicule. Seventh Mama was somewhat helpless, but since her master had said so, if she didn't apologize, she was afraid that she really couldn't keep her life. This servant knows her mistake. Princess, please spare my life. Seventh Mama's voice was a bit sharp. Although it was an apology, one could hear the unwillingness in her voice. Luo Qingchen didn't speak, but still looked at her coldly. The two little palace maids beside her were naturally unhappy, and they both looked at Seventh Mama with angry faces. On the contrary, Seventh Mama shook her head with an unhappy look. Her facial expression really made people have the impulse to go forward and slap her. Fengling Air could naturally see Luo Qingchen's displeasure, but she didn't know why she felt inexplicably happy when she saw her displeasure. It had to be said that her elder sister's daughter was extremely beautiful. She looked exactly the same as her mother when she was young. In fact, she wasn't even a bit prettier. Back then, the ever-victorious General Gu Zhao fell in love with such a face, which led to the end. She hated her sister, so naturally, she didn't like the baby that came out of her sister's womb. Therefore, when she discovered that Luo Qingchen's expression when she looked at Mo Yi was very different, she could roughly guess that her relationship with Mo Yi was definitely not as simple as a simple master-servant relationship. No one would be rude and unreasonable in front of the person they liked. Not to mention that Luo Qingchen was a 14-year-old girl. She naturally hoped that Mo Yi's impression of her was perfect, so no matter how angry she was, she would not do anything out of line. This was Fengling Air's guess, and she didn't think that she was wrong. But the reality was poles apart from her guess. After a few seconds, Luo Qingchen slowly walked forward and stood in front of Seventh Mama. Her right hand slowly raised her face that had some fine lines. Without saying anything, she raised her hand and slapped down. With a paw sound, the sound of the slap shook the entire Moonlight Palace. At this moment, even Feng Ling Air was frightened and took a step back. Although seventh Mama was called a mama, she was only in her 30s. In ancient times, there were many people who became nannies at this age. But this was the first time that Luo Qingchen had seen such an arrogant mama. She was a person who liked to be straightforward. She couldn't do such a thing in front of anyone. Chapter 2282. Luo Qingchen's slap was extremely strong. When seventh Mama's eyes were filled with stars, and she raised her head with a flushed face, Luo Qingchen slapped her again. The two palace maids standing beside her had an excited look on their faces and almost shouted out loud. Feng Ling Air stood not far away and looked at Luo Qingchen in disbelief. She could even feel a faint murderous intent from this 14-year-old girl. After 2 slaps, seventh Mama felt that her ears were starting to ring. Luo Qingchen was about to raise her head and slap her again when she immediately kowtowed and said, "Your Highness, please spare my life. Your Highness, please don't hit me." Humans, they were all like this. If they hadn't suffered, they wouldn't know fear. Everyone thought that she was a princess who had just woken up. Even with the protection of the Emperor and Empress, she still didn't understand this world. In addition, she looked relatively weak, so some servants naturally wouldn't be respectful. What's more, seventh Mama did have some status in the palace. At least among the servants, she had the image of a big sister. And this time, Luo Qingchen completely shattered her image. She narrowed her eyes and said coldly, "Spare your life? I don't want to spare your life. This servant really knows her mistake." Seventh Mama kept kowtowing, and there was a slight trace of blood at the corner of her mouth. Feng Ling Air frowned, as if she couldn't stand it anymore. She hesitated for a moment, and her expression changed. She smiled and said, "Your Highness, don't be angry. This servant doesn't know the rules. She has already hit and scolded. For Inyang's face, let her go this time." Seventh Mama was stunned for a moment. She originally thought that her master would reprimand her. She didn't expect that she would make peace. Luo Qingchen frowned, and a cold expression flashed across her white cheeks. She didn't expect this turn of events. "Your Highness, why don't we just forget about it?" He frowned, and his gaze fell on her red palm. There was a dim light in his eyes. Luo Qingchen narrowed her cold eyes and felt a little wronged. It was probably because every girl hoped to be doted on and hoped that when faced with thorns, there would be someone who could stand by her side and cut through the thorns. After all, this was a kind of belief. In the next second, she slowly raised her eyes, her clear eyes carrying a faint starry light as she said, "Since young Master Mo Yi has said so, I will let this lowly servant's life go today. However, in my eyes, there is no second time. Sometimes it can be forgiven if it happens once, but it can't be forgiven if it happens a second time." Hearing this, Feng Ling frowned slightly and looked at her. "What do you want? I can spare this servant's life for the sake of young Master Mo Yi, but I feel uncomfortable whenever I see her. If concubine Feng feels that she should stay, I will ask Imperial Father to make the decision." As soon as her voice fell, her eyes narrowed and a faint smile appeared on her face. If they wanted to make her unhappy, then she would make everyone unhappy. When everyone was unhappy, she would be happy. In reality, Luo Qingchen's words didn't sound like a big problem, but for Feng Ling Air, it was a problem, because she didn't have a choice. A princess or a servant. In the eyes of the emperor, there was no need to choose. Moreover, she was the princess that the emperor and her sister protected and spoiled. Chapter 2283. Miss Feng. Seventh Mama bit her lip, looking very unwilling. After all, there were no 3,000 beauties in the palace, and there was no fighting and scheming. She was used to living a comfortable life, so she was always worried. It seems that seventh Mama doesn't want to leave the palace. Luo Qingchen shrugged and smiled. Her expression was very natural as she looked at her and said, "If you really don't want to, then it's not like you don't have a place to go." Seventh Mama was stunned. She thought that Luo Qingshun was going to give her a way out. After all, Mo Yi was present. Showing her magnanimity would make her more charming. This servant will remember the princess's kindness. Seventh Mama was like spring water that opened her eyes. She instantly entered her own state and looked at Luo Qingshun and said, "This servant really loves the palace. I would rather be an ox or a horse than leave." In fact, the moment Seventh Mama opened her mouth, Feng Ling air frowned. From Luo Qingshun's reaction just now, it could be seen that she was not a soft-hearted person. That was why she spoke first and let Seventh Mama leave the palace. She didn't expect this servant to be so stupid. She actually thought there was a chance. In this world, some words shouldn't be spoken too slowly. Otherwise, there will be no leeway. Luo Qingshun looked at her with a proud face and said, "Since you're willing to be an ox or a horse to stay in the palace, then go to the laundry bureau. Your position is to be a good envoy." PFFF. The two little palace maids standing behind her couldn't help but laugh out loud. Usually, Seventh Mama relied on her status as one of Feng Ling Air's people. In addition, she had been in the palace for a long time, so she often bullied them. Now, there was suddenly a princess in the palace. Those arrogant servants finally got the lesson they deserved. What? Could it be that you were just pretending to be an ox or a horse? Luo Qingshun looked at her and said, "You have to bear the crime of deceiving the princess." The good envoy of the washing clothes bureau was the lowest position in the palace. Generally, it was the place where the wrong palace maids were punished. It was also the place where the female family members of some officials were exiled or beheaded. People died in that place every year. It was definitely a cold and damp place. Seventh Mama's expression was very shocked, and her dark eyes were wide open. She wanted to say something, but at this moment, she finally realized that no matter what she said, it would be wrong. A princess is a princess, and a servant is a servant. She seemed to have finally come to a realization. Whose world was this? Whose harem was this? Even though Feng Ling Air was Luo Qingshun's concubine mother, she was still a relative of Luo Qingshun. It was impossible for her to protect her. The air sank into a short silence. A few seconds later, Feng Ling Air said, "Since Seventh Mama has chosen to stay in the palace, then according to the princess's words, send her to the laundry bureau to reflect on her mistakes." "Where?" "You take Seventh Mama to the laundry bureau." Luo Qingshun snorted, took off the imperial token from her waist, and handed it to her. "If she doesn't obey or runs away halfway, you can directly take the token, find a nearby guard, and punish her on the spot." Hiss! The moment her voice fell, a gust of cold wind blew. The snow seemed to be heavier. She glanced at Mo Yi. Even if she was the winner, she felt a little lonely. "Yes, princess." After the little palace maid answered obediently, she looked at Seventh Mama and said, "Mama, let's go." Seventh Mama's expression had already become sluggish. She was a little confused, but she had to accept such a result. Like a puppet, she could only drag her feet and follow the little palace maid step by step. Chapter 2284. It's getting late. "Miss Feng, I'll be going back first." After Seventh Mama left, Mo Yi cupped his hands in greeting. His dark eyes had an indescribable depth to them. Actually, he already couldn't stand anymore. That girl was wearing too little clothes. Her body was already weak, and she had just recovered from a serious illness. She had already stood in the wind and snow for a long time. She had put on makeup, and he couldn't see her face clearly, but his heart was still faintly worried. Since when did he start worrying about her? He didn't know. He only knew that they had met in the snow. Many times, as long as he saw the snow, he would think of her. Is young Master Mo in such a hurry to leave? I didn't even finish the dance, I just performed. I only drank 1 cup of pear blossom wine. Feng Ling Air's red lips were slightly raised. The cold wind blew at the veil on her body, making her look very charming. It's getting late. The emperor ordered this humble one to look after the princess. He looked at Luo Qingshun and said, "It's time to send the princess back." Without knowing why, when Mo Yi said this, her eyes couldn't help turning red. She was pretending to be calm on the surface, but even her fingertips couldn't help trembling. In the wind and snow, his words made her feel like he was hugging her. He didn't want her to be alone here. Lonely. This must be the princess' first time coming to my moonlight palace. How about you come in and sit? I'm a naturally undisciplined person, so I don't have anything to entertain the princess. She paused, and then her lips curled into a very proud smile. Other than a few jars of wine that young Master Mo made, there isn't anything else. In Feng Ling Heir's heart, a man like Mo Yi would naturally like a woman like her. Enchanting, charming, and charming. How could he like a little girl who was still wet behind the ears? Moreover, he had been sending her jars of wine day and night for a long time. Her heart could already see the sun and moon. Right now, she was looking at Luo Qingshun with the attitude of a winner. She could only be a loser forever. When Mo Yi heard this, he frowned and his expression changed slightly. He narrowed his eyes and said softly, "If Miss Feng wants to sing and drink, wait for me to send the princess back before coming to the Moonlight Palace." "What do you think?" "I don't think so." Luo Qingshun bit her lips slightly. The moment she suddenly raised her eyes, a pair of clear eyes crashed into his deep eyes. It was a gaze that was filled with unwillingness and slight grievance. "Princess, since Yang invited me, how can I refuse?" Luo Qingshun gently waved the round fan in her hand. "Then I will have to trouble Yang." As soon as she finished speaking, she walked inside without looking back. She suddenly felt like drinking and getting drunk. The interior of the hall was covered in silk. If she wasn't in the Imperial Palace, this place would give her the same feeling as here. Even the air was filled with the smell of wind and dust. She didn't understand why Mo Yi wanted to become a winemaker and specially brew wine for Feng Ling Heir. Was it because her singing was good? Or was it because she looked enchanting? Or was it because she looked charming when she drank? She didn't know. She only knew that this wine was very tempting. It's not easy to find pear blossoms in this snowy weather, but I said I liked it yesterday. Young Master Mo brewed some pear blossoms for me today and sent them over. Feng Ling Heir waved her hand and raised her eyebrows with a smile. "Ching Ching, bring another cup and fill the princess with wine." When she heard these words, her heart was like a raging sea, but her expression was calm to the extreme. No matter how carefully Feng Ling Heir looked at her, she couldn't find any clues. But Mo Yi, who was standing to the side, opened his mouth to speak. Chapter 2285. Luo Qingshun was stunned. She felt that there were many things mixed in Mo Yi's eyes that she couldn't explain. She didn't understand, but she had an indescribable feeling. Could it be that he wasn't willing? It seems like young Master Mo is taking care of Her Highness. Feng Ling Heir's tone was very displeased. She half leaned on the couch, revealing one of her white thighs. She looked at Mo Yi and said, "You also know that I am a proud person. There are many people that like me, but there are very few that I like." Luo Qingshun and Mo Yi looked up at the same time, unconsciously looking at each other. Feng Ling Heir naturally saw this, and her heart was filled with depression. She shook her lips and said, "If young Master Mo cares about Her Highness, you don't need to come to my Moonlight Hall to join the fun. I can also order people to send the wine you brewed to Her Highness Glimmer Hall." Ever since she met Mo Yi, the impression that Mo Yi gave her was that of a modest young master. He knew that she liked to drink, so he entered the palace to become a winemaker. No matter what wine it was, he could brew it. Moreover, the wine he brewed was fragrant and mellow. It was very delicious. Whenever she drank and danced, he would always silently stand on the side and watch. His deep eyes would have a faint light. It was very good looking. But the only thing that she didn't understand was that he had never done anything to her. If a man didn't have any thoughts about a woman, there was only one reason. That woman wasn't charming enough. To her, almost all the men in this world would bow down to her. Aside from the ever-victorious general, Mo Yi was the only one who could do that. What she couldn't get would always be in turmoil. She was this kind of person, the more she couldn't get it, the more she wanted it. Miss Feng is mistaken. Mo Yi's brows slightly knit together. He narrowed his eyes and said, It's not easy to collect this pear blossom wine. There's only this one jar of wine in this season. Your Highness doesn't understand wine, so don't waste this pear blossom wine. Luo Qingchun heard this and revealed a self-deprecating smile. Her cold eyes narrowed as an ugly, bitter smile appeared on her lips. She looked at him and said, "Could it be that young Master Mo is reluctant to part with this wine? Oh, so that's how it is." Fengling Air was very happy to hear this. Her gloomy face instantly brightened up. It was as if a gust of spring wind had blown on her face. She was so proud. She took a sip of the pear blossom wine and said, "It really is a good wine. Young Master Mo, you don't have to be like this. I've received your kind intentions. If your Highness likes it, you can have a drink. I won't mind. After all, there will be more of this kind of wine in the future." Luo Qingchun's eyebrows moved slightly, but her expression was very cold. Fengling Air's every word sounded so provocative, even with a hint of mockery. "Miss, here's the wine cup." "Perfect, perfect." Fengling Air took the wine cup, filled it to the brim, and handed it to Luo Qingchun, saying, "It's just a cup. There's nothing to be reluctant about." Luo Qingchun's right hand gently grasped the round fan, her eyes cold. This feeling of being given alms was really hard to bear. But losing a person can't lose a battle. Then many thanks for Andy's generosity. Luo Qingchun took the wine cup and looked at Mo Yi indifferently. She planned to drink the wine in her hand in one gulp. Little did she know, in a flash, Mo Yi rushed up. He held Fengling Air's waist with one hand and grabbed the wine cup in Luo Qingchun's hand with the other. Without saying anything, he gently put the wine cup in front of Fengling Air's mouth. Chapter 2286. In this moment, Luo Qingchun was frozen in place. The grievance in her heart surged and attacked her heart bit by bit. Mo Yi. She bit her lip. Her right hand picked up the jar of pear blossom wine on the table and threw it at his face without another word. The strong fragrance of the pear blossom wine spread through the entire moon palace. She pursed her lips and said, "I understand." In reality, she did not know what she understood, but she just wanted to say these 4 words. She wanted to say these 4 words to Mo Yi. Fengling Air was also splashed with wine at the same time, but her expression was not angry at all. Instead, she had a sweet appearance. She leaned into Mo Yi's arms and said softly, "It really is a waste of a good jar of wine." She did not know how she left the moon palace. She only knew that she was really angry. It seemed that 30% affection was nothing in Mo Yi's heart. After 1,000 years, she could not even compare to Fengling Air. "Your Highness, don't be angry. What kind of wine is this? We don't want it." "That's right. It's not good for your body to be angry. Don't look at how many people like Miss Feng. In reality, her reputation outside is very bad. I heard that a general she liked in the past fell in love with the Empress. After that, she changed. Originally, she did not care about the little palace maids gossiping, but when they talked about the Empress, she was a bit interested." "General? Which general?" Luo Qingchun sat cross-legged. She was still very depressed, but when she calmed down, she could think of Mo Yi's eyes. She felt that those dark eyes held complex emotions. Just like how he looked at her 1,000 years ago, there were countless thoughts hidden in them. However, she was still very angry. So if gossiping about Fengling could make her happy, why not? It's that ever-victorious General Gu Zhao, the general who died on the battlefield. In the next 2 hours, Luo Qingchun heard about the love and hatred between the general and Fengling Air and her mother. The ever-victorious General Gu Zhao had been childhood sweethearts with the 2 sisters since he was young. His mother, Feng Exener, was a very quiet woman, while Fengling was the opposite. She liked to show off and was active and lively. However, Gu Zhao liked quiet women. He had liked Feng Exener since he was young, and when he grew up, he wanted to marry her. It was a pity that excellent things were always snatched by many people, and there were also excellent people. Unlike Fengling Air, those who fell in love with Feng Exener were all infatuated people. The second person was the current emperor, Luo Yu. Love at first sight. She was conferred the title of empress. She had a harem in name only. This was what Luo Yu had done after marrying Feng Hexa. Gu Zhao also saw all of this. He knew that the emperor was truly good to her. In the end, he could only let her go with tears in his eyes. He kept asking for battles and always used the least number of troops to get the best battle. The small countries at the border were terrified when they heard his name. Since he couldn't marry her and protect her, then he wanted to protect her country. Only when the country got better and better would she live better and better. During this period, Feng Xian wanted to betroth her sister, Feng Ling to him several times, but Gu Zhao refused. He said, "This life has been difficult. Please don't make this subject do things that I don't want to do." In the end, she couldn't force him. After all, it was a feeling she couldn't accept. If she pushed it to others, it would be too unfair to Gu Zhao. But what Feng Xian didn't expect was that Gu Zhao would die on the battlefield in the next year's battle. Chapter 2287. So, I heard that this has always been a knot in Miss Feng's heart. Because even when the corpse was brought back, General Gu Zhao was still tightly holding a pendant with the word Ixen written on it. Humph! Luo Qingshan gave a light snort and said with a proud face, "That General Gu and my father are both people with good taste, unlike that Mo Yi." Thinking of how reluctant Mo Yi was to part with that jar of pear blossom wine, she felt sad in her heart. Wasn't it just a broken jar of wine? He wasn't like this when he made the peach blossom wine for her that day. Actually, this servant looked carefully today. That young master, Mo, really does have some similarities with General Gu Zhao. One of the palace maids said, "Thinking about it, that's true. Otherwise, how could young Master Mo succeed when so many people fell for Miss Feng's pomegranate skirt?" "Ah, I won't listen, I won't listen." Luo Qingshan frowned and covered her ears as she said, "Who said that Mo Yi succeeded? I keep feeling that things aren't as simple as they seem." Although Mo Yi's actions just now seemed like the wine he personally brewed must be drunk by the people he cherished the most and not shared with anyone else. But if one thought about it carefully, one would feel that it was a bit strange. It was just a jar of wine, and Mo Yi didn't seem like a bigoted person. How could he do such an unimaginable action? When one calmed down and thought about it, one would feel that it was inconceivable. But she couldn't think of a reason. Reporting to the princess, Eunuch Lin is asking for an audience. Eunuch Lin, Luo Qingshan froze for a moment. She was thinking carefully about what had happened when she was suddenly interrupted. She felt like her memory had short-circuited. The palace maid seemed to feel her confusion and immediately explained, "It's the emperor's personal eunuch, Eunuch Lin." "Oh, what's the matter?" He passed on the emperor's order for the princess to go to the hall of supreme harmony. Luo Qingshan frowned in confusion, but she still nodded in the next second and said, "I know. Have him wait a moment." She changed into a new set of clothes, put on some makeup, and walked towards the hall of supreme harmony with a peach blossom umbrella. She had been recuperating in Glimmer Palace for so many days. In fact, her imperial father and imperial mother had come to see her every day. Sometimes, they would secretly come while she was asleep. But she knew it all. She felt very satisfied to be able to receive more familial affection than ordinary people in the depths of the palace. It was just that the road of love was a little bumpy. However, why did they want her to go to the Hall of Supreme Harmony this time? She knew the answer the moment she approached the Hall of Supreme Harmony. Because before she could bow, a person came out of nowhere and hugged her from behind. Then, with a happy tone, he whispered in her ear, "Qingshan girl, you're finally awake." Of course, Luo Qingshan didn't even see what the person looked like before he was knocked to the ground with a punch. "Who is it?" Luo Qingshan angrily roared. She almost took out the Phoenix Dance sword from her portable space and slit his neck. "Ouch!" Morong then cried out in pain. With a pained expression, he said, "Don't hit me. It's me. It's me." "You? Who are you?" Luo Qingshan looked at the swollen right side of his face and the trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. She seemed a little embarrassed. Chapter 2288. "Qing don't be rude." Luo Yu walked out from behind the curtain of the main hall with her hands behind her back. "This is Murong Country's crown prince. Although Luo Yu spoke in a low voice, she still stood by her side and gently stroked her head. She then looked at Murong Nan and smiled. This girl has just woken up. Her mother and I have spoiled her rotten. She hasn't learned any rules, but she has surprisingly learned how to fight. Father Emperor, I didn't see anyone. Luo Qingshun looked at Murong Nan with an embarrassed face. Young Master Murong, please don't mind. Qingshun will apologize to you here. Actually, if it was before, she wouldn't apologize. But looking at Murong Nan's snow-white Shoda face, she felt that beating someone was wrong. Even if that person strangely hugged her, she couldn't be too ruthless. No, Your Majesty, it's my fault. Murong Nan scratched his head and said, when I saw Qingshan walk over, I was especially excited. I haven't seen her for about a year. Last year, she was still lying in bed. That's right, the imperial family's blessing. Luo Yu looked at Murong Nan with satisfaction. Zhen and your brother are discussing the matter of establishing diplomatic relations. Qing Er will properly entertain young Master Murong in her father's place. Luo Qingshun wasn't a fool. With a glance, she could see that her father had the intention of matchmaking her and Murong Nan. But she swore that this was the first time she saw Murong Nan. Thick eyebrows, big eyes, skin like snow, and wearing a golden robe, he was very imposing. But when he talked to her, he seemed to have no temper. From beginning to end, he didn't give her the feeling of an overbearing crown prince. Qingshun girl, I really didn't do it on purpose just now. I was too excited to see you. Don't blame me. She walked side by side with him on the stone path of the imperial garden. Delicate snowflakes slowly fell, and the air was filled with the faint fragrance of plum blossoms. Cough, cough. Luo Qingshun cleared her throat and said, I don't dare to blame you. I just don't understand what young Master Murong is excited about. Logically speaking, although she had existed in this world for 14 years, it was no different from not existing in this world at all. Or it could be said that her life before the age of 14 was a blank. She had no friends, no enemies, and no lover. Where did this Murong Nan come from? The last time she heard this name, it was on the bronze mirrors panel in the chaos space. Was the world playing a joke on her? I like you. Murong Nan looked at her without hiding anything. The first time I saw you, you were only 6 years old. I think this girl is very cute, but why can't such a cute person open her eyes and look at the world? From then on, Murong Nan would travel thousands of miles from Murong country to visit Luo Qingshun every year. Every year, he would stay in Glimmer Palace Hall for a few days to chat with her. Even though she never woke up, he still didn't give up waiting. Of course, when Luo Qingshun heard the words I like you, her eyes widened and she looked at Murong Nan with a confused expression. She lightly coughed twice and pulled the corners of her mouth into an awkward smile. Are all you people from Murong country so unrestrained? Not at all. We're all very reserved. Murong Nan looked at her with a serious face and said, you have to be certain that you want to accompany someone for a lifetime before you confess. Reserved. Was it? Chapter 2289. She didn't know why, but when she heard Murong Nan's irrelevant words, her mood seemed to improve a lot. The books weren't wrong. When you were with a cheerful person, your body and mind would become happy. Is Murong country far from here? Luo Qingshun slightly tilted her head and looked at him as she asked. Although Luo Qingshun felt that Murong Nan's words were too direct, he was still a guest, and asking a few questions was necessary courtesy. It's far. Murong Nan counted with his fingers and said, if we travel day and night, it'll take about half a month. When Luo Qingshun spoke, he continued, but being able to see Qingshun is worth it. It's just that your country is really cold. For someone who was born in a hot area, coming to a place that snowed all year round in winter really made it difficult for him. Since you're not used to it, why don't we go back to Shimmer Palace Hall and sit for a while? Actually, she could feel that Murong Nan was trembling uncontrollably, but she endured it and didn't say anything. That's good too, he chuckled and said. It's been a long time since I've seen Qingshun's Shimmer Palace Hall. When they went, because she was still asleep, it always seemed very cold and cheerless. Now that she was awake, it must be a different feeling. The next second, just as they were about to turn around and go back, Feng Air's voice came from behind them. This world was sometimes very big, and some people would never meet in their lifetime. But this world was sometimes very small, and they could meet someone they had just parted with. For example, Feng Air and Mo. Your Highness the Princess also came to the Imperial Garden to admire the flowers. Feng Air hooked her lips into a smile and said, "You also brought a man." When she said this, she also glanced at Mo's eyes. He was still standing by her side. Although his gaze fell on Luo Qingqian's body, he couldn't see any clues from his eyes that were as black as ink. This is Murong country's crown prince. His status is honorable. Luo Qingqian raised her eyes and said with a hidden meaning, "He's different from those men." Since the other party wanted to provoke her, it was not her style not to respond. The country of Murong is very powerful. Therefore, as the crown prince, Murong Nan's position is very honorable. She had specially used the word man to mock Feng which was what she had heard. In fact, it could be roughly translated as, "The men around you are too lowly. They are not qualified to be compared to the crown prince." Your Highness is right. Feng Air gently held Mo's hand with her right hand and said with a smile, "How can people of our status compare to you? If you know that we can't compete, then why bother saying so much?" Luo Qingqian snorted and said, "If it weren't for my mother, you should know what kind of status you would have in Chang'an." Luo Qingqian. It had to be said that her words had indeed angered Feng Air. People like singers and dancers could only be born in brothels. Luo Qingqian's words were very heavy and didn't leave any face. Feng Air clenched her teeth and said, "You really don't understand the rules. If you were born among the common people, you wouldn't have lived for so long. What a pity. I was born in an imperial family. So what if I was born in an imperial family? How many people in this world like you? But there are many people who like me." Feng Air charmingly hooked her lips and said with a smile, "Those people have done many crazy things for me, but I don't even remember their faces." Chapter 2290. The Chang'an Banquet during the Mid-Autumn Festival. These words lingered in Luo Qingqian's mind for a long time, unable to disperse for a long time. Could it be that he met Feng Air at the Chang and banquet and fell in love with her at first sight? Feng Air was stunned for a moment. She slightly glanced to the side to look at Mo's dark eyes. She stared at him for a few seconds and said with a chuckle, "I don't remember, but I'm sure young Master Mo remembers it very clearly." After all, very few people could forget her after seeing her. She was born with this charm, a charm that men could not resist. "I naturally remember it very clearly." He slowly opened his mouth. Although his face was as calm as dust, his tone was very cold. This kind of coldness was something that Luo Qingqian had never seen from Mo. "It seems like I am the person, young master, Mo can't forget." Feng Air was very excited. She looked at Luo Qingqian with an excited expression and said, "Your Highness, did you hear that?" She was someone who had been through the hardships. With just one look, she could tell that this arrogant and rude princess liked Mo. And Mo was willing to stay by her side as a humble winemaker. Luo Qingqian narrowed her eyes, and her gaze slowly fell onto Mo's body. She actually hoped that Mo would walk to her side and stand on the same side as her. She wanted to tell Feng Air that the person he couldn't forget was not her. But in the end, this hope was just an extravagant hope. He did not say anything and just looked at her with a very heavy gaze that was filled with emotions. Although he did not speak, Murong then opened his mouth. "I really don't know what there is to be proud of." Murong then narrowed his eyes and responded with an imposing manner. "This kind of woman would be drowned in a pig cage in our Murong country." He hated people who were not loyal to their love the most, but he never thought that there would be someone in this world who would be so shameless to take this kind of disloyalty as pride. This Murong country's crown prince is quite meddlesome. Could it be that you've taken a fancy to our country's princess? Feng Air lifted her eyes with disdain and rolled her eyes arrogantly. No matter what, she was still the Empress's younger sister. It was fine if she had to swallow her anger once or twice. Even a kid from another country who was still wet behind the ears came to teach her a lesson. She couldn't tolerate this. Little did they know that before Murong Nan could speak, Luo Yu's reprimanding voice came from behind him. "How dare you?" Everyone was shocked and fell to their knees. Feng Ling'er's face instantly turned pale, and her heart pounded. She naturally knew that Murong Gua was powerful, but thinking that the other party was still a young child, it didn't matter if he said something that crossed the line. Who would have thought that the emperor would overhear it? "Greetings, your majesty." Luo Yu coldly snorted and said, "If it wasn't for Exen face, do you think that we would let a foul person like you stay in the palace?" Hiss. The surrounding people all sucked in a breath of cold air. Normally, Feng Ling'er's arrogance was extremely arrogant. They heard that a few days ago, even the princess who had just woken up had suffered at her hands. Who would have thought that when she was reprimanding the Murong country's crown prince, she would be caught by the emperor? "Your Majesty, no need to speak." Luo Yu's cold eyes narrowed as he said, "From today onwards, you are forbidden to leave the palace and reflect on your mistakes. If you still don't change your bad habits, you will be punished according to the Luo dynasty's laws." Your Majesty, if elder sister knew about this. Chapter 2291. For Luo Yu, Feng Xian would always be first. So even if Feng Ling'er's reputation was so bad, he was still willing to let her stay in the palace. However, this didn't mean that she had some kind of supreme status. Just now, that arrogant and unrestrained expression of hers, who gave her the courage to do so? "What are you still standing there for?" Luo Yu ordered. "Take her away." Yes. Luo Qingshun did not know how all of this ended. She only knew that this was the first time she felt her father's strength. There was a kind of grievance that she had suffered not long ago, but at this moment, it was all returned. Luo Qingshun wanted to get up and flatter her father, but she did not expect Luo Yu to speak first. After he saw Feng Ling'er being taken away, he immediately helped her up and said, "How was it? Your father helped you stand up for yourself." Luo Qingshun was stunned for a moment. Then she smiled and said, "So you're like this, father?" "That's right. Your mother likes me like this." Luo Yu quietly whispered in her ear, "Father thinks that Prince Murong is exactly the same as me when I was young." "Same what?" "Infatuated." PFFF. Luo Qingshun could not hold back her laughter and said, "Who praises themselves like this?" That year, after your father saw your mother, he did not like anyone else. Qing'er must believe in father's eyes. As Luo Yu spoke, he did not forget to look at Mo Yi standing to the side and said, "Where you can ask young master Mo." Before he entered the palace, he was a heaven's fate master. Mo Yi's brows slightly wrinkled, his deep eyes carrying a faint light. He half narrowed his eyes as he looked at Murong Nan. After his slender fingers calculated, the corner of his mouth unconsciously raised into a smile and said, "I wonder how Hua Shang is related to Prince Murong?" In an instant, Murong Nan's cheeks turned pale. He seemed to have sunk into an extremely painful memory. His pair of bright eyes suddenly became dim. "Hua Shang." Luo Qingshun glanced sideways at Murong Nan. She wanted to say something, but didn't. He was a little flustered, and his eyes kept trembling. Luo Qingshun was very puzzled. She wanted to ask, but he spoke first. I'm sorry. He apologized 3 times in a row, cupped his hands towards Luo Yu, and then turned to leave. Luo Qingshun wanted to stop him, but Murong Nan's brother stopped her. "Princess, let him be alone." Murong Bei shook his head and sighed. "I'm sure the Destiny Master already knows. When it comes to matters of destiny, the living can't be so accurate." Mo Yi replied politely, "Because the affairs of the world are unpredictable. As long as one is alive, there will be variables. Only the dead can calculate the events of their lives." Luo Qingshun cleared her throat and said, "So, young Master Mo Yi, is this amazing? A person who can calculate matters of destiny actually disregarded everything to become a winemaker. It really is a waste of talent." "Princess," and Mo Yi could hear the anger and displeasure in Luo Qingqian's voice. "You're still angry." Luo Qingqian crossed her arms and said, "If you prepare a jar of good wine and tell me about Huashang, perhaps this princess won't be angry." "And Mo Yi, you've angered the princess." Luo Yu looked at him and said, "This is my family's most precious princess. Her mother and I only have one princess. You can't bully her."